but you're still in shape. You're obviously in shape, right? So like you understand the main point of working out and of jiu-jitsu. And one thing I learned through my path to becoming an athlete again was that like that win, that victory, that knowing that you did something. I mean, because every day when you write, some days you're going to be like, man, I can't think of anything. I can't do anything. I can't focus on anything. But jiu-jitsu, as long as you showed up and as long as you rolled, even if you got your ass kicked, even if you go to the gym and it wasn't the best workout you ever had, the fact that you showed up is this victory that makes the day a success in some form. Because there's this thing about jiu-jitsu where there's a deep learning process and a deep the whole process, the whole game is about getting better at jiu-jitsu, but you're getting better at all of the other things as well. You're dealing with adversity, you're overcoming that adversity, and you're just taking those steps forward and becoming, eventually you're a purple belt, eventually you're a brown belt, eventually you're a black belt, and suddenly you're the person that you used to look up to when you were a white belt. And all those things that you didn't know you'd learn, but you could see in the black belt and that he understands just from a personal perspective, how they handle themselves. You eventually get there, and that's the journey. And, that's why we show up to the mats, and, like you said about the culture, there's a lot of different views. And one of the main things about a 10th Planet School is just like, are you looking into it? Like, are you curious? Are you, I mean, that's what's so fascinating to me about our family, is that you see it in every gym because we're kind of a hub now, being in 10th Planet Austin, the beautiful gym we got.
Yep.
And being Austin's a city a lot of people want to come to. So, you can see the same ethos throughout the system. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. We have a good gym here. It's stout. It's a Renzo Gracie. I actually was scheduled with a podcast with Warren earlier today, and we had to reschedule for later in the week. But it's one of those things I definitely want to get back to. I fought amateur MMA
Nice,
probably
dude.
7 years ago, and I didn't take any specific route getting really involved with anything other tthan striking. And I really wish now later on in life that I would have stuck with it. But
dude, you got yourself in a cage though. I mean, you got quite a, you got a lot of courage there, because like, unlike football, it's only you, which is cool too, is that like, you only have to rely on yourself. But, I returned punts in college, so I was all alone, but this is even more all alone. And it's a similar, you're dealing with a lot of violence, but you're all alone. And to go out there and have an amateur career in any sort of striking, because that's a little bit different than jiu-jitsu. It's another step forward in terms of the kind of toughness that you have to to do it. So, I mean, and jiu-jitsu is something that you can continue to do as you get older.
Yeah, you have some killers at your gym on a daily basis. You get to roll with some serious guys and girls.
Yeah. I get to get my ass kicked quite frequently. It's great because I've been there, like we were saying about Lauren. Lauren and I have been there for 3.5, 4 years, right? And when we started off, it was all white belts. And so to see that the school, and right, it's connected. It was connected to the On It Academy. Now we're across the street. So there was this great symbiotic relationship between us and the gym. And then, we grew and we continued to expand. And then Curtis, our head instructor, now owns the spot across the street. And we've watched the culture Curtis helped create with us. And now he moved to Alaska with his family to take care of his family as well, his family in Alaska. And it feels cool to see the culture we've created, and that now we're attracting people from San Diego, and we've got Gabe Tuttle now. We have Kyle Boehm. We've got a lot of people just coming through too. I mean, there's a lot of people who want to visit. There's so it's.
I heard this guy named Joe Rogan might be coming through the area.
He might be. I wouldn't happen to know anything about that. But yeah, there are quite a few rumors, and he might be finding himself here in Austin, Texas, along with the rest of that crew
Yeah.
as well, which will be great for the comedy scene here too, which is
Yeah.
super exciting.
There's a reason why we have action based in Austin, Texas. I mean, initially being rooted there through coffee with the founder of Action Coffee, but just the culture in general. The 10th Planet fits right into that.
I tell people often that I feel like this place, I feel like Austin is what California felt like in like the late 60s, early 70s, as it was, the birth of some kind of movement was going on. It just feels like Austin is a spot where, it is, I don't know. It's a unique spot. It's a blue dot in a red state, which I think brings the best of everything to our place. It's a really balanced place. It's a place where you can engage with different ideas and have these conversations and have a wide variety and just people are open and honest and really liberal people. It's a really cool liberal place, where we have these, the kind of conversations that we have.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I want to go back to your writing. Is that something that you've always done, through, early in career, school? Like what's the journey and path on writing? Or is that something that more came out of other things that you were doing?
I always made lists when I was a kid, man. I always liked writing stuff down. I was always had a pen, always had a piece of paper, always had a book wherever I went. My parents were both in publishing. So
Okay.
one of the things that's really cool is my dad's my editor. So I've gotten to share my relation, like have that relationship with him where I share something with him, he gives it back to me. And every time I give him stuff now, it's better and better. It's less notes. And I've learned to write through that. But my mom always had it in the back of her head too that I would eventually write a book as well. So there may have been an imprint in my head of that too. I always wanted to write a book. It was really the only thing outside of sports that I ever saw myself doing.
Okay.
Uh, and then it was really, I got my master's in business so I could be an NFL agent. And, I studied the sport of football and analytics and contracts and all that stuff so that I could become well-versed in the things that I am required to understand to negotiate a contract. And, that was really the journey to writing. And now writing is really the main thing that I like to do because of the stuff, with jiu-jitsu, with writing. It's just this process of becoming a better person through practice,
Yeah. So being an NFL agent was really the career path that you identified while you were in school. Where did you go to school, by the way?
University of Rhode Island. And then
Okay.
I got my master's in business from Rutgers, but that was a means to an end of getting that so I could become an agent, but I got a lot out of it.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's like, and being an NFL agent, I feel is like one of those things everybody wants to be, but no one
Yeah.
really ever looks into what's the path to get there. Was there something
Yeah.
that, did you go and investigate what that was, or did you have some other means, like a family friend or somebody that you knew that was in the industry that kind of showed you the ins and the outs of that? Or
My quarterback in high school, his dad was Wayne Corbett's agent. So that was the first inkling of, okay, there's somebody I know that's doing that. Playing football at Rhode Island, I had some teammates that went to the NFL, had agents. I saw, okay, I get an idea of what they're doing. I get it's like kind of like a part-time job that could work towards netting you, a percentage of large contracts in the future. It's a gamble. I mean, it's a difficult business, right? But I had a conversation with a friend, Brian Cushing. He's also heavily into jiu-jitsu now as well.
Mhm.
And he left one agent for another because the second agent knew everything about contracts, and he just really impressed him in that facet. So that's when I went out and I started writing for overthecap.com and kind of established myself as this contract salary cap guy.
Mhm.
And sort of, then I built on that. And then I realized I found this information to write a book about like a Moneyball angle. And that was my first book. And now the second edition is the one coming out in the fall. But yeah, it's just, that's the path I foresaw, which was become an expert and then try and find my way into the industry, because you have to have like some kind of niche. You have to have some kind of angle. You have to have something that separates you from other people, because it's not an easy business, and you have to have the capital to do it. So you've got to maybe find a job or a gig with a bigger firm, or you've got to, put yourself in a position to have that extra capital. But it's a tough gig. It's a really, hard way to make a living. So it's definitely not the only thing you can be doing.
So are you still actively representing any clients and whatnot? So how's that been through COVID?
This is my first year.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, man. Right. Like, so I'm helping represent a defensive lineman from the University of Texas named Jamari Chisholm. And unfortunately for him, he's got freak size. He's like 6'5". He's 300 pounds, ran a 4.91, right? We even got him, with the guys that on it with CJ McFarland, put together an impromptu pro day for us on the same day that Jamari was supposed to have his Texas pro day. And it was really great to see, because, as you can imagine, you envision your pro day years out. You envision all of these scouts coming to see you. And Jamari took it in stride. And, he was disappointed for a minute, but he then went out and he performed on that day. But you find yourself in a position where the roster's not 90. The roster's 80 this year. So the roster is now in this position where, like, guys like Jamari aren't given the opportunity. They didn't get the training. They didn't get the mini camps that come in May. They didn't get the rookie mini camps. They didn't get the tryouts that would have come along. So it just becomes one of those things where, there's not much that anybody can do, because, we're dealing with this thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tough first year to be in it, because you got to pay your dues to be a part of the NFLPA's certification heading into the next year. And they're still expecting those. All the states are still expecting the licensing fees and all these kinds of things. Yeah. So it doesn't stop, but it put a big damper on a lot of guys' opportunities to just get signed and have an opportunity. And, you hate to see that, knowing that it happened to one guy, it happened to your guy, it happened to 100 other guys that maybe might have had a different story. And then you see what's going on with colleges. And I played in the CAA, which is the Colonial Athletic Association, and they're pushing their games into the spring. And there's a lot of questions. And then you think about, like, high school kids and kids going into, like, their senior year of college or high school with all the things. And as a football guy, you're just like, damn, like, you feel bad how much it must affect. Like, football was life for me. Football was everything. So to take football away would have been. Yeah. Are you? You're in Cali, right?
No, I'm in Pittsburgh right now.
Oh, so. Right. You're in Pittsburgh right now, right? Did you move out there?
So I'm from Western Pennsylvania. So okay, cool. I grew up north of here, in a really small town called Bradford, PA. It's like small little 10,000 person city. Zippo lighters is kind of what we're known for. But I moved to Pittsburgh like 4 years ago. I've lived all over the place. I was in Philadelphia for a while. I lived in Indianapolis. I was in Des Moines, Iowa, kind of just hopped around the Midwest and East Coast for a while. And my two brothers lived in Los Angeles, and I went out there with them, and we got into the cannabis business for a little bit. And we started an event services company. And then 3 months later, COVID hit. And it's like no events. And then with cannabis, like, it's kind of like been a nightmare as well. So totally.
Yeah, it hits everybody. It's hitting everybody for sure. That was one thing that really got me upset during COVID, was just thinking about all the gym owners, because I've had such a kinship to gym owners. I trained at Joe DeFranco's gym in Jersey when I was in college. So, he was a mentor of mine, and you understand the economics behind that, and then you scale it out to things like what you're doing, and it hits everybody, and it's tough.
Yeah. And it kind of doesn't make sense either, because if there's anything somebody should be doing, it should be exercising. It should be getting themselves better shape. It should be moving. So to shut gyms down, to me, and not say that that's non-essential, it's asinine.
One of the things too is from the data that there was this guy, Aaron Ginn, he put out the data in March, and medium.com took it down. And it had the data from South Korea and the data from Italy. And it said a lot of young people were going to get it and they'd be fine. And it said a lot of old people were going to be in a position where they, if they got it, they'd be at risk. So I kind of felt too, is that, like, as young, healthy people, We should be going out. We should be going to the gym. We should be living our lives. Maybe we're going to get it. We're probably going to get it. But, you know, that's kind of our duty, is to kind of create whatever this herd immunity people are talking about, right?
Yep.
Is to kind of put yourself where it's like all the healthier people are the ones that went out and they established herd immunity, and, you know, they didn't bring it home and kill someone at home. Unfortunately, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Oh, I've taken some shit from people because I've been very vocal about the whole mask scenario, and not like, look,
Yeah.
I wear a mask. I go into a store that asks me to wear a mask. I put it on.
Me
I
too.
get it. I get it,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's common
Yeah.
sense. It's going to obviously keep you from blowing certain amounts of
Yeah.
stuff through your thing. It's not perfect, but hey, okay, I'll sign up if it's not going to be too big of an inconvenience. But like, people doubling down on that and not wanting to talk about the 30 other ways that you can make an impact. It's like, hey, let's all get on this train and let's just
Yeah.
ignore everything else. What's your point? Are you really
Yeah.
trying to make an impact? Because if you're trying to
Yeah.
make an impact, you could talk about a number of other things. Or are you just
100%.
trying to be virtuous? Are you trying to be the person that's in the camp? You don't want to be wrong. It's just really convenient. So I'm just going to go with
Yeah.
what's the, like, the popular conversation right now, which to me,
Yeah.
it's like, then just shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear your opinion then. There's enough
You're
of it.
speaking my language. You're speaking my language.
Well, there's enough of it, right? I can
Yeah.
go and hear it. So I don't need you to write a big rant about why I should wear a mask. I've read it enough, you know. Maybe
Yeah.
tell me something interesting about, you know, vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
Yeah,
Yeah. You said, yeah.
tell me
Exactly.
something interesting, you know,
Yeah.
and I'll listen, because that's what we should be doing. We should all be sharing information. But just like being an asshole and being, you know, oh, I wear a mask because of you, not because of me. And well, thanks. I'm so glad you're so fucking awesome and you care so much about everybody else. But you're also 290 pounds, and my insurance premiums went up last year. So get
Yup.
yourself well. You know, like
One person said to me is that about during lockdown, one person said to me that your rights end at my nose. Like, I was punching him in the face if I went outside and I continued to live my life. And it's like, there's this one issue is the one issue where we're all supposed to capitulate to everybody else, but we're also not, at the same time, we're not allowed to talk about, like, I just saw, you know, no disrespect, I just saw Sports Illustrated had the curviest model they've ever had, and she's pretty big. And I'm like, aren't we in the middle of a pandemic where all the healthy people had to stay inside to protect the people that were at risk? And we're celebrating this. And like, that's kind of the perverted thing about our culture right now, is that, you know, we need to get back to whatever the truth is. I've been writing a lot about this. I've been taking notes. I've been journaling, like, about jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu, like, is kind of a vehicle for truth for me, right? And that's one thing that's fascinating to me about Eddie Bravo, is that, like, he has such a creative mind that he built a system, and then he went out and he beat the people who actually, he beat the best guy at, you know, at the time, from the family that created the sport itself. And he did that by putting people in positions that they had never been in before, that they'd never repped. And that's essentially what his system is, right? He created a lot of different games, and that's what jiu-jitsu is. There's a lot of different games and areas that you can bring people into. And if it's the game of chess, right, which is what it is, if you're bringing someone somewhere where they haven't been, then they don't understand the proper responses, right? And so he's such a brilliant guy in that manner. And, that's what Eddie's whole look into it kind of stuff that he talks about is that, he's got such a fascinating mind, because he beat the game. He beat the game of jiu-jitsu, and he's created this system that is now expanded out to all these schools and creates all these high level competitors. And he did it by thinking so far outside the box that he took the gi off at a time when everyone was like, that's disrespectful, that's this and that. And now we're in the future of jiu-jitsu where everyone wants to see no gi over gi, right? So it's like he understood that that's where the game would become exciting. That's where the game would apply to MMA, which would then get people like ourselves further involved in it, because it's like, maybe I want to fight MMA one day. Maybe I just want to be able to test myself one day and go out there and do that. And I'm learning a system that's going to make me feel very comfortable in that, because I'm not worried about grabbing lapels or grabbing your sleeve or all this other stuff that doesn't apply within MMA. And Eddie is just somebody who's always seeking truth. People can, they hear him on Rogan and stuff, and you can think he's crazy and stuff. But when he really boils down to it, all this look into it stuff is just like, what's the truth? I'm searching for it. And whatever the truth is in our society, and whatever the true way of being is, and whatever the, wherever, whatever is the proper way for us to live. And one of the things that keeps coming back to me too is we see the way that people attack Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was trending again yesterday because people were mad at him. And there's a lot of these truth seekers and a lot of these guys that really have a positive impact on men. And I feel like there's too much attacking of these guys that have personally infinitely made my life better by the things that I've learned through either listening to them or listening to the people that they gave a platform and allow them to speak, for countless hours. And, there's a lot of issues right now with the truth. And there's a lot of issues right now with anything past just trying to tell people, like you were saying about being virtuous. There's a lot of that out there. There's this attempt to be virtuous, but the virtue is basically, for lack of a better term, there's just no depth to it. There's no depth to it. And it's like the truth is a long conversation to be had and something to be discussed over beers or whatever.
Well, there's been a loss of nuance.
Yeah, that too.
That
too. And it's important to have these, conversations on a podcast because of that.
Yeah, I think people boil things down to very black and white. And when you do that, it's impossible to entertain big, complex ideas.
Right.
You write it off. It's got to be this or that. And
right.
I'm just somebody who in the 33 and a half years that I've been on this earth, I've never seen a whole lot of anything be black or white. Everything's nuanced if you want to look deep enough. There's extreme nuance to every level of decision making and everything that's occurring around us. So I'm a data person. I think you're a data person.
Yeah.
And the more data that you can take in, the better you can understand situations. So I think even if it's bad data, sometimes you got to sift through it and you got to take that in almost to check your bullshit sensor too. You got to keep yourself almost, you got to test yourself every once in a while. And you got to throw that in there as well. But, you were
talking about it. You were talking about it, about what happens when you smoke. With Ray, you were talking about, the way, the paranoia or whatever that word is, the way it makes you question and it makes you poke at this and it makes you, try. And one of the things you're saying too, that speaks to me as well is that, with the book, the second book I write had some things that were improvements, and I look at them as improvements, but they were changes in my philosophy, not principle changes in my philosophy around team building, right? So my books are about, essentially, the first book was called Caponomics, Building Super Bowl Champions. The next one is going to be called Caponomics, how NFL champions are built and dynasties are destroyed, right? And so that becomes, and one of the things that I learned through the process of that was bringing maybe a little more nuance into some of these perspectives, right? Like I had more of I was probably a little bit too harsh on maybe like wide receiver spending in my first book, right? I was a little too harsh on the Falcons spending 25% of the cap on Matt Ryan and Julio Jones in 2016. And I attributed some of their loss to the fact that, which is valid, it's a valid belief that some of the issue they faced against the Patriots was they ended up playing 99 defensive snaps and they had a very, very young defense. And they had gone all in on the strategy that they have a young defense because of Dan Quinn, which is a valid. Dan Quinn was a defensive coordinator with the Seahawks when they won their championships, which is a valid premise, right? He'd won before with like a cheap defensive backfield, and they drafted well and all that. But like there are these consequences around spending. But in the second book, I added a little more nuance because I'm 3 years removed from writing the first one, or 2 years. So now I'm in a position where I can be a little more nuanced and that's one of the issues with the lack of nuance is that, this is one of the things that that I realized about school over the last few months is that doing well in school is essentially about doing what you're told and remembering what you're told. Right? It's not about critical thinking. It's not about being able to write an essay. Like I talked to my dad about how he, what they were doing when he was in school. And it was all about essays and you could argue. It was about arguing your point. Right.
Yeah.
And we need to, we need to be able to write better. We need to be able to talk better. We need to be able to explain like ourselves better. And like, I'm upset. I always carry a notebook with me. I'm always writing on my notes, and it's not just stuff about football, because writing is the art of just working out your ideas on paper or working out your ideas on your phone, right? It's
Mhm.
not necessarily paper anymore, but as long as you're doing that, there's an ability to get to the more nuanced aspects of conversations, just exploring your mind and exploring topics. And I think that it's something that's lost because a lot of our dialogue in the country is driven by the Twitter space, and you can see that at newspapers how they respond to kind of the outrage that they feel like might come back on them. Maybe we've even seen the New York Times kind of cower to it recently with Tom Cotton's and then what they did to the editor. So, and it's not that people are always ill-intentioned, right? I mean, it's just people are scared and people are afraid to stand up to the mob, and we can't be fearful of standing on the side of nuance.
Yeah. Wow, man. You know, it scares me in a
Yeah.
lot of ways because there's very few people who can be their true selves. And even those people, I wonder if they're being their true self or if they're playing a role. And so it's
Hmm.
easier to be their true self as a role because it's, they kind of
Yeah.
act to that a little bit. Um, but we've essentially empowered the people so much through information, through giving everybody a mouthpiece and the ability to feel important. That
Yeah.
it's I don't know. I think I think we're in trouble in a lot of ways. I hate to be bleak, but
No, but
um,
it is scary. Yeah, I mean, you're right.
yeah, no. But I think you're in a good state at least
Yeah.
when shit falls apart. Um, so what is the process in getting a book published? And how much are you allowed to get into what occurred? And I know we weren't able
Yeah.
to initially have a conversation. We were trying to be careful about some things, but
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that kind of leads us right into like the what we were talking about is that you're saying that it's bleak out there, but one of the things that I realized through COVID was, like I said, it's important to me to go to Jiu Jitsu, the ability to have an impact on people there as a recovering addict, whatever that term means, because I that's in the past for me. I ain't never going back, right? So I don't know what recovering means, and that I guess that's what it means to me. But part of that process for me is I've learned a lot about myself, and I went to war with my mind essentially, right? I had a demon in my mind that would tell me, "Damn, like you need more Percocet, man. You need more," and it was always telling me that, and it was always like, and it was like that for a couple years. So to beat that, and then to be a writer and to live within my own mind, I got a lot out of that process. And the people who come into jiu-jitsu schools, like you said, weirdos, right? It's typically like there's a wide variety of people that are there for some reason. They understand that there's some growth that they need to experience. And we've created an atmosphere that I feel like draws that out of people. So what I realized was that's what's important to me. And I realized too, in being a part of that community, and which is part of the issue with our culture, is that there aren't a lot of people don't have communities like they once did, and they're searching for that. Sebastian Junger's book Tribe, right? He
yeah,
talks about PTSD largely being about you're not around your boys anymore. You're not around the guys that you were in the military with. And for me, that spoke to me as a former football player, and that was kind of what told me I needed to get involved in like another community like jiu-jitsu. Was that I wasn't around my boys anymore. I wasn't around people like me. And then you look out into the world, and if you're kind of, have a little bit of that warrior gene or whatever, you're really into like physical pursuits. You've got to find that group, because if you just are searching around aimlessly, you're not necessarily going to find them. And so part of that whole story for me is like, I have my community and I know what I stand for. And so in terms of standing up to the mob, I heard you and Ray talk about it as well, is that like there's this crazy thing going on where Candace Owens can see her GoFundMe for a business get shut down because Candace Owens is running it. but people can go out and they can donate to a fund that's bailing out protesters and rioters, and we're not even going to have a conversation about that. And I watched almost all of sports media. Any outlet you could think of was donating to it and proudly donating into it and creating a thread where they were all like, I matched your $50 donation.
Again, it's the nuance, right? Because I support, not allowing police brutality. I support,
100%.
systemic racism being something that goes away. Like that's fucking horrible. And there's a lot of it. There's more than anybody wants to admit that goes on in this country. It's
100%.
It's sickening, right?
White people and black people who get arrested for the same drug crimes get different results. Yep. Money is part of that driving process, because if you get arrested, to get out of it, how do you get out of it? You give X amount of dollars to some already rich lawyer who then goes talks to his friend who's the judge, and the judge lets you off. And if you don't have that money, you can't pay off. It's a weird payoff system where it's like a distribution of resources from somebody who's not doing that well to somebody who's doing really well, who then talks to his friends who the judge. And then if you play that game, you'll be all right. But if you can't play that game, then I don't know, maybe it's going to be difficult on you. But sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, you're dead on, man. And I think the thing that messes with me is you can have all those beliefs, but if you want to criticize people for smashing windows and stealing Nikes, then you're all of a sudden the nuance is gone. You're not allowed to critically think. You're not allowed to. No. It's like, and if it's frustrating because it's not because of your own lack of ability to critically think. It's because of the folks who don't want to critically think and say, you know what, I don't have either the energy or the capacity to look at this in a way that you're looking at it, to really see that, oh, I can support and be against these certain things, but also not want to, just hop on and cheer on folks that are fucking up society.
Bro, they've been breaking stuff in Portland for 2 months now. Yeah. And the media is kind of covering for it. Like, we just had something happen in Austin. Maybe it's a nuanced scenario, but like it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that someone died. It's always unfortunate when someone dies. But the dude had an AK-47 and was videotaped earlier that day talking about how no one was going to do anything to him because they weren't really about that life. Essentially, he used more colorful language. But he had an AK, he got shot, and the news, I see Sean King pretending that there was like no, and it's just like this cycle of like this virtue signaling that's also intended to divide. And one of the things that's fascinating to me is that at Rutgers, I had to take a business ethics course across the river. It was in Jersey City. It was across the river from Wall Street. The people who were why we had to take the business ethics course, right? Because they were like, after 2008, we got business ethics is super important. And the only thing I remember from that class was take nice sounding issues, things that people will get behind. Those are really good for positive PR. And that's essentially what all of these corporations do. I mean, on March 2nd, Forbes wrote an article about Nike, Adidas, and Apple. This might get you demonetized, using slave labor in China. And a week later, I'm not going to get conspiratorial into it, but a week later, all of their top athletes, all of their biggest endorsers, suddenly the NBA season was suspended and the whole world reacted in panic. And it became this huge thing that I am going to get conspiratorial for a moment, that is now distracting us from the Michael Flynn case. That's now distracting us from Ghislaine Maxwell. There's all this stuff that's going on behind the scenes too, that we're all like, kind of like, whoa, what? Like, it's not just this, there's all this stuff.
So do you think it's as big as somebody cooked it all up to cover up one of those things? Or do you think this is just something that's happening and people are continuing to throw kindling on the fire, so to speak, in order to keep the distraction going, so that whatever's popping up in the background, whether it be Flynn, Epstein, an election,
mail-in voting, all that kind of stuff. So what's fascinating to me, right, is that all these states opened up, right, in May, and all the bump that we were supposed to see and all the chaos we were supposed to see, it didn't come. And all these news articles were getting dunked on of Georgia's going to be a bloodbath in 2 weeks, and it wasn't a bloodbath, whatever. early June, and this is one of the things that was really stuck in my craw about what I saw sports media doing, was these were all people that were telling me that all my friends that own jiu-jitsu gyms, I have a friend who lost a gym. I mean, I'm sure I have more friends that will be losing gyms. I mean, the economic consequence of what we've been put through, which is, in my opinion, we were told 2 weeks to slow the spread, and it wasn't. So the same people who in March and then through May were advocating for one of the greatest civil rights violations in our lifetimes and in our country's history, then spent June telling the rest of us how much they cared about Black people, when 40% of Black businesses might go under from some things I've seen. And by the way, there's a pandemic going on. So we just sent, and so people are now sitting at home encouraging people. We said something about vitamin D. Vitamin D is a big issue in terms of this virus. Apparently, if you're deficient, it leads to negative outcomes. What group of people have more? Black people have like a 73-75% rate of vitamin D deficiency, and then when the spike in cases that obviously was going to come when 15 to 26 million people went out and they protested in the street during a pandemic, when that came, everyone pretended it had nothing to do with the protest. The same people who were telling us to stay home on football Twitter, now we're saying that the protest had nothing to do with the spread and it was all about the reopening, and they completely disregarded what was going on in LA, which was an increase in cases, and they never reopened. And it's just the kind of deception going on, and the kind of the coincidences that just keep piling up in terms of how things kind of are slanting towards. I'm a guy that looks at incentives. Part of the reason my book Caponomics is named Caponomics is because of Freakonomics, because you have to look at the hidden side of everything. You have to look at what drives people. And when you consider the media and their role in the Russia collusion hoax, and the DNC and all this kind of stuff that kind of piles up together, when you look at all that, you're like, man, there's a heavy incentive to kind of distract from that, and to kind of, when you couple it with the fact that they want Trump to lose, there's a lot of incentives behind it.
Yeah, no, oh God, man. I think you nailed it, right? I think everybody wants it to be some bigger hidden conspiracy, when in fact, just the desire to hide yourself from being wrong,
Mm-hmm.
in a
Yeah.
world where your value is that you're providing information. If you're providing
Yeah.
misinformation, you really don't have a reason to be in existence anymore.
For 3 years. They
Yeah.
all provided what they knew was a false narrative for 3 years. And like now it's kind of, impeachment failed. And one of the other things that was going on in February is that a lot of these states that have sanctuary cities, a lot of these states are we're in a lawsuit with the DOJ. So part of what I feel like's been going on with COVID and with the protests and the riots, and the destruction of property aspect of this, is some of these cities and states have now come to the federal government and asked for money. I mean, Illinois asked for like 40 billion, and from what I recall, it's like 36 billion of it is for pensions. So there's a lot of states that are basically bankrupt, which brings me around to the really uncomfortable reality, is that how much of our country is like heavily reliant on China, how much of our debt, how much of our businesses, because that's one of the things too, is that the NBA was a big red pill for everybody. This league that kind of built itself on, we care about social issues. That was kind of their response to Kaepernick, was Kaepernick's kind of that lightning rod in sports that's made everything political, and really kind of cultivated like the culture that we see on political Twitter, football, but political Twitter, football Twitter, same thing. But it's NBA. The NBA pretended to be about all these things and was like, oh, the NFL is so far behind in the times, they don't understand. And Kaepernick led to a 19% decrease in viewership, right? And that matters. I'm a salary cap guy. If you're leading to a decrease in viewership, that is going to directly impact the future earnings of the largely Black population of players that could make money and have a positive impact on their community. There's nothing more powerful in this country than, like, I think about this thought often, is that like sports are making an entire generation of Black athletes capable of going home and helping solve the issues that may have impacted their community as a child, which is incredible.
Well, here's what I never made sense to me with the whole Kaepernick thing, right? there's other dudes in the league who have spoken up. They still have
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah.
Why? Right?
Right.
Because there's a balance. Do you
Mhm.
provide more value than you're worth? And
Yes.
there's no doubt that he used to be a really good quarterback. I think very athletic, somebody who wasn't really over a couple of years able to beat the scheme that a defense was putting in front of
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And that's why teams didn't really see a value in him. There's, whether you like it or not, there's a stigma with him. There's a tension, right? There's a tension. Let's just call it a tension,
There was a
right?
tension with Tim Tebow too.
Exactly, right? And
Yeah.
people didn't want to deal with
With
the
Tebow.
attention.
We
So
already seen this game play
yeah,
out. We
I don't,
already
and
saw it.
and that's the thing. It's like, why do we have to talk about the rapper? Let's just talk about he wasn't good enough,
Yeah.
or else he'd still be playing. Because there's 100 examples of guys who have said more ignorant things. I don't have to care one way or another whether he kneels, stands, or not. Do what you want to do, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? I prefer that you don't, but I also watched a video, and this is something I was pretty critical of Colin Kaepernick, and I watched a video that showed that, you know, he kind of was pretty vocal, and he sat, and there was an army or a
Napier.
military guy, yeah,
Yeah.
and spoke to him about that and said, hey, you know what? It seemed like Kaepernick took his advice and said, you know, I don't want to be divisive. I just
Yes.
want to shine the light on a situation, which to me is pretty commendable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it went wrong, because I've also seen a lot of sound bites which to me seem
Yeah.
misguided,
Yeah.
whether he's gotten other organizations or people that have gotten influence into him or his camp. But the initial direction that he seemed to be going was one in which, hey, I'm trying to just show people that there's an issue. And wasn't it
Yeah.
tied to him being harassed or something? He was pulled
Yes.
over and had a gun pulled on him possibly,
Yes.
which kind of then, you know, and maybe it was good timing. You know, you get moved to second string. How do I stay relevant?
Hey,
I got a
I'm
lot
an
of time
agent.
on my hands.
I mean, I'm certified as an agent. I've been wanting to be an agent for a long time. There has been no better post-career transition in the history of football players. He went from backup quarterback to martyr. And one of the things with him was, it was never for me when I sent you some notes, and it was like, I was on board with it. You know, I'm big on making changes to the system. I'm big on what he was talking about. I'm big on legalizing weed, treatment for addicts over jail, rehabilitation programs, using prisons as an opportunity to take people who didn't have a chance and maybe improve them. You know, whatever we can do there, and whatever we can do to keep people out of prisons, and whatever we can do to just improve our society as a whole, right? It's all tied together, right? And the issue that became for me with Kaepernick was, Brendan Schaub actually talked about this too. And it was good to hear someone else kind of come to the realization. So, you're not crazy, right? And, it started to seem like Kaepernick didn't want to play. And when he was going to be signed by the Ravens, his girlfriend posted out the Django Unchained picture of Ray Lewis, when Ray Lewis said that he should stop kneeling. We heard you. Let's just keep playing. You can make a huge impact still and keep moving forward. He wore a Fidel Castro shirt in Miami. And one of the things about being a 30-year-old backup mobile quarterback is you need to be in a spot where you fit in. And that took one of the main spots where he fit in off the board, Miami. And at the time with Ryan Tannehill. And then, we had this thing, he had this tryout last year or earlier this year or last year, late in the season. And, he moves the tryout at the last minute. He doesn't want to sign a waiver that says you can't sue us again. That's essentially what the waiver said, from what I recall. You can't sue us again. We can't go to court over this again. And you just have to waive your rights. And, he already won one lawsuit as well. Like, he'd already won something against the NFL. And, he didn't want to sign it. He moved venues, and then he laced into the league. When 25 representatives were at this other location, he laced into the league in front of all the media and all the reporters. And it's like, there's something about how he's delivered the message that doesn't feel uniting. And, the other thing is too, is he has said stuff about the flag. He asked Nike to not make Betsy Ross flag shoes. So to say that he's not against the flag, I mean, if you want to be able to speak during the national anthem, and this is my problem with sports media. There's a lot of outlets out there that think that Colin Kaepernick should be allowed to speak during the national anthem. However you may feel about, whatever it is, principally speaking, you want him to be able to speak during the national anthem, but you don't let your own employees like tweets from people that you disagree with on Twitter. You bring them into your offices and you sit, and I know this happens. Like, this is part of what kind of came to this, this realization, this kind of tussle I got in with football Twitter was like, and one of the other things too is that Kaepernick donated to that $1 million to that fund, that Minnesota Freedom Fund that was bailing people out. And as I pointed out, and which got me in trouble with my publisher, I pointed out that the Minnesota Freedom Fund and New York City Antifa were both advertising that they had the same group of lawyers, the National Lawyers Guild, which is apparently a group that has been around since the 1920s, started by communists and continued, through to this day. And, it's just the thing with sports right now. And one thing that, I'm kind of, why I stood up for what I stood up for is that there's a lot of people in sports media that don't have the right to speak. And what the sports media is attempting to do right now is the same thing they did in schools, the same thing they did in all the other media, which is only present to people and to children, most importantly, because, I'm sure you watched a lot of sports growing up. I'm sure you watched a lot of Sports Center.
Mm-hmm.
And now as an adult, you understand how important the stuff that we put in front of kids is in terms of developing their mind and how they see the world. And if you're only going to present this worldview that's kind of like America bad, America does all these things wrong. Like, I tried to watch the Bruce Lee documentary with the kids, right? The Bruce Lee documentary is like this, like it's all through the prism of like race and like all this other stuff. And it's like, there's so much more to Bruce Lee. And, my girl's youngest is like, this is boring. Let's watch something else. It's like, it's not even entertaining anymore. And it's like, one of the things that really was crazy about it was they showed us videos of the protests in 1967 against British rule. This was on ESPN, on a platform that when the NBA when Daryl Morey's Hong Kong tweet went out, ESPN sent a memo to their employees to not talk about the China relationship because ESPN's owned by Disney. Disney also owns ABC News, which squashed Amy Robach. You remember her getting caught on the hot mic, her Epstein story in 2016, right? So it's like there's all these interconnected people where you're just like, oh, like, y'all ain't really about, and that's where my next book is. My next book is just like, I'm so engrossed in this woke capitalism phenomenon that I discussed about, it all stemmed from that first thing I learned from at that Rutgers class, which is everyone's just trying to use these issues that are nice sounding and that get you positive PR. And they're trying to cultivate for themselves attention, which then leads to dollars, which is really just a really cynical form of capitalism.
Well, and the thing that's really sinister is what wouldn't be the biggest story right now to generate all kinds of revenue for people
Yeah.
that we're not talking about.
Bro.
And because I think we both agree that the media is driven by clicks, right? I've been duped like 4 times this week where I've like clicked on some story and I've read through it and I'm like, what the fuck? That has nothing to do with what that said, right? And that touche,
Yeah, dude.
I'll give it to the writer that got me because some of them are so obvious. It's like, I'm not even going to bother reading that. But there's a few that have kind of caught me off guard and I've had to read through it. But it's all driven by getting those clicks to fulfill the ad revenue that they're now competing with all kinds of people that were never their competitors even 5 or 10 years ago. Yeah. Yet the biggest story possibly in the history of mankind is not being talked about. People are disappearing. People have died. A guy, I mean, Jesus Christ.
The FedEx driver.
What the fuck, right? Like, how is that not talked about or entertained? Because the standard of what we do talk about, it's not like it's Walter Cronkite getting on there and kind of reporting the day's facts of what's happened around the world. I mean, we entertain all kinds of bullshit from both sides of the aisle. Yet we won't talk about Epstein.
I know, dude. I know. And you wonder how much dirt that fool had on everybody. He must have had everybody's number, because when you really start to look into this stuff, man, and here's one thing too. is that Twitter just said that they're going to like ban people who have QAnon activity, right? And QAnon activity is what we're talking about right now. We're talking about Epstein. So this would be QAnon activity. Everything from Obamagate to this, and then to a bunch of other things in between, could be construed as QAnon activity. So it's really sinister when you think of it from that perspective, that like that's your basis, because I don't I don't see QAnon people burning down buildings or whatever. Like I see a lot of that going on right now, but I don't think it's a QAnon guys. I heard it's the Antifa guys, right? And so, but I mean, Epstein must have had dirt on everybody. And what's really sinister about it too is that like, it's not just that people were his friend earlier. It's that Bill Gates was his friend after 2008. And one of the stories that I've known about for quite a few years, that I've been yelling about for quite a few years, is in 2008 he got busted for soliciting a minor for prostitution, right? And he got out of it by discussing with the judge how important he was, because he was one of the founding members of the Clinton Foundation. And then after that, he was still friends with Bill. He was still friends with Gates. He still had an office at Harvard. And one of the things about this whole thing, I've been talking to Sam Tripoli about it a lot, right? We're getting into it, is the woke six. And these are the woke six, the six organizations that pretend to be the wokest. And I think that there's a historical lesson to be taught about, I learned it in this book called The Communist by a guy named, I think it was Paul Kengor. And it was about Frank Marshall Davis, who was Barack Obama's mentor, who was a card-carrying communist. And one thing that remember the term Potemkin villages? So in North Korea, they would bring people over to North Korea before everyone found out what North Korea was always about, and they would be like, "Oh, here's our supermarkets. Everything's great here." They would do the same thing in the 40s in Russia, and they would bring over black activists, and they'd convince them that, you know, Russia's way different than America. We treat everybody here with respect. When in reality, Bill Burr has a joke, and it's a phenomenal joke. What was that?
Dennis Rodman.
Well, Dennis Rodman got sent over there too to play some, you know, to do the whole basketball thing, right? But like Bill Burr's got a great joke, and he's like, you know, we're talking, you know, there's a debate over, you know, is it Hitler or Stalin? Everyone's like, oh, he's worse than Hitler. Everyone forgets about Stalin, right? And so this country and this, you know, system, the USSR, and one of the things about that, you watch Chernobyl on HBO?
Dude, I started watching it on an airplane, and I got through all but the last episode, and I can't find it.
You can't find it?
Well, I think I could probably find it, but I have not finished that last episode. Yeah.
Please do. But you saw the important scene for what I'm talking about right now, is all the people that were telling everybody that it was misinformation to talk about what happened at Chernobyl, right? And so one of the things that they understood was that they could sow, the communists in the 1940s understood, was that they could sow racial division, and they could pretend to be for something that they really weren't, right? And the woke six are, all six of these industries are heavily tied to China, and China is a communist nation. So, and I also, there's this nagging question in my head of, to do business in China, what kind of conversation do you have to have with the CCP to do business in China? What kind of deal do you have to make? And that's very curious to me, especially when we consider the NBA is kind of what started the whole panic and what happened in October, right? And so the woke six is Hollywood, the media, the DNC, you know, because Hillary was getting donations from China back, not Hillary, Bill, in his reelection. There was a scandal that everyone forgot about, was that the Clintons were getting some money in the 90s from China. So I think they've been playing a long game with a lot of our politicians, right? And that's one of the things about Clinton Foundation and all these organizations, is that I think if we really dug underneath all this stuff, we'd find out that a lot of these foundations were friends giving each other money to avoid taxes, friends paying each other off for things, countries paying people off. So the woke six is, you know, the media, Hollywood, China, the DNC, Silicon Valley, academia. And then I place the NBA in there as well, because you know, they're their own industry now. And it's fascinating to see all the connections between these organizations in China, and then also see how much of this narrative they're pushing on us, and how many of those people, right? And think about those corporations, think about those multinational corporations, all of them putting their support behind Black Lives Matter. I can't forget this, that after like that first weekend in Minnesota, you know, things had spiraled out of control fairly quickly. You know, I don't know how they got there, but they spiraled out of control. Like the next Monday or Tuesday, it was like every big corporation was like, we stand with you, this and that. And there was no one mentioned anything about like, hey, we hear you. Let's do this peacefully. Like, hoorah. Let's go out there and prove a point. Like, let's do it. Which I'm all for. So once I kind of went off on football Twitter, I just felt like a wave of relief where I was just like, man, I just need to be myself. I know who I am. I know, I look around and I see the people who I look up to. They don't care what the mob says. They know who they are. And, I know who I am. Like, I get a daily reminder on the Jiu Jitsu mats. And, I came out of it, my publisher, a couple weeks after I argued with these guys on football Twitter, they canceled my contract. We didn't have a morality clause. I know because I negotiated the contract. So I knew, I had a feeling they were behind on paying me every time they were supposed to pay me. But so I was like, I have a feeling these guys don't really like me all that much, because I was sitting there and I'm like, here's something else on COVID. Here's something else and I'm out tweeting all this stuff. And I'm one of the four voices in sports media who is just like, what are we doing staying inside? I'm like, I need to go to jiu-jitsu. You guys have to stop keeping the gym closed down. I'm going nuts. Right. And, admittedly so, I'm going nuts. I'm like, here's the data. I'm going Alex Jones. I'm like, we've got to get back in the gym, and so, they canceled the deal, but because I didn't have a morality clause, they had to pay me out my contract. They had to give me all the rights to my book. So they paid me out in advance. They wanted me to not speak about how they essentially discriminated against my viewpoint, because they're quite all right with publishing books from people who call every Trump supporter a white supremacist, which is kind of the way you're supposed to talk in sports media. Is you're allowed to just go out and say that, but you're not allowed to have a nuanced perspective on an alternative side. It's like, and to see that, and it's just like, I kind of won the battle. I had a lawyer step up, Clinton Mickle, and he stepped up really big, and we won, and now I get to publish the book myself and be an independent author with the benefit of getting paid to rewrite this thing.
And that's the thing, man. Like, regardless of what your opinion is, good ideas will outweigh bad ideas. I believe that. I've heard it. I've seen it happen. Yeah. And we're restricting that. We're not allowing the merging of ideas. And I think it's because of the softening of society through participation awards and all of that. I mean, it's people don't want to admit it, but that's truly the case. There's a very clear chunk of society that's kind of right after my age group, that mid to late 20-year-old age bracket that didn't have to face the same type of diversity in general. I'm not saying everybody, but in general, that everybody else had to prior. And you can see the impact of that as a whole.
Yeah, it's like like I said, school's about, like, I was someone who didn't care about school enough. Mm-hmm. So when I had a professor in college who sat there and told me how great Barack Obama was in a class that wasn't about Barack Obama, I started Googling this stuff, and I'm like, well, that's not true, and that's not true. And then I'd start arguing with them, and then and so, like, most people are like, whatever, I don't really care. I'm gonna just sit here. But, like, I mean, look at my ears, man. I haven't had these that long, but I mean, I could have had them all my life
too, right? Like, you're not coming, and you, I'm sure, weren't coming from a point of, I hate Barack Obama, as much as you were, I just live in a world where I can't have fake information that's not true. Like, I'm only bringing this up because you're kind of spitting something that's infactual.
And it drives a lot of frustration too. What people still don't understand, which is why, like I joke around about it, is that we need 4 more years of Trump because they still haven't learned the lesson. The lesson of 2016 was a big FU. It was, you don't, like, because there's a lot of people out there that are essentially, their viewpoint kind of gets discriminated against. There's a lot of people in the middle of the country who are just looked at as like this big amorphous blob of idiots. And they're not. They're people that they're people that may farm, they may live like some, they may live a simpler life than us. They might not be farmers, right? But they have a simpler life. And one of the realities of our current issue, right? We're talking about police brutality. We're talking about African-American, Black issues. One of the issues is the same issue that the Black community faced in 1980. Middle America is facing, opiates.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the fascinating things about China being at the center of this is suddenly we care about something that came from China when, thank God, I got out of doing pills when I did, because, I've lost friends. I'm going to continue to lose people that I was friends with,
Yeah.
because fentanyl is in this shit. Whether it's a pill, they're sending over fake pills that look like the 30 milligram blue pills that, and it's coming over from China, and we're killing. There's a ton of kids getting killed off, and that's one of the things too, is that why I'm skeptical of experts is because I was given ADHD medication at 14. I didn't need it. I have enough energy. It didn't calm me down, and I got prescribed Percocet for the first time at 16 when I broke my foot. So I was basically prescribed a speedball. And then that speedball kind of became this thing that kind of felt normal to me in some weird capacity sometimes, because I was always like rationalizing to myself that I could write better or think better or whatever. And our big pharma has kind of, created this whole problem, and then we just move on from it. We're like, oh, Purdue Pharma, they're going to get sued by Oklahoma, but they're just going to declare bankruptcy. And all those people that died, they're not going to come back. All the stuff that we did in the 80s to the Black community as a government and as a, speaking of crazy things, I mean, the CIA has a history of potentially being drug dealers. So, I mean, that's not even conspiracy at this point, right? It's just
Barry
like,
Steele's.
yeah. I mean, Barry Seal, the American Made movie. I saw some chart about, Taliban, the Taliban was decreasing opium production, and then that was in 1999, 2000, and then you can take it from there. Everyone knows what happened. 95% of the world's opium comes out of Afghanistan now. How did that happen? So it's just,
That's where I always get hung. Like I truly believe the after effects, we didn't want to leave because we didn't want to leave control of that.
yeah,
I go back and forth on, are things like that motive, or are they the icing on the cake that when you go in,
right,
you keep
right,
the oil, you keep the
yeah,
poppy fields.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, you
That's
know.
an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, because is it why, or is it, oh, also we get, this will pay for the war.
Yeah.
Wait, but it didn't pay for the war because we're still going into further and further debt. So who got the money? Who got all the money?
I guess if it's thought about at all on the front end, it's a part of the reason why.
Yeah, and it's I mean, like, so point being is that as a nation, and we're talking about the division, right? Is
Yeah.
like we're all facing the same problems. So having a media that only promotes one side of a problem creates anger that could be better served of those people understanding that, or both sides, right? Like the Black kid from the hood and the white kid from Kentucky, them understanding that they're facing the same problems. Whether you've got money or you don't have money, you're going to run into a problem, whether your family's got it or not, because there's plenty of things that trip up the wealthy kid, and there's plenty of things that trip up the poor kid. And it's just it's what you make of it. I mean, everyone knows of the trust fund kid who never seems to get off the ground. So, everyone's got their own story, and we've got to get back to having some sort of understanding of what we all stand for together. And that, we are a lot more alike than we are different.
Well, it's funny because when you mentioned earlier how I said the kind of the quote unquote weirdos in jiu-jitsu, I think we're all weird in a way.
Yeah.
Everybody, right? We all have skeletons in our closet. We've had life experiences that we don't share with other people, whether it's
Yeah.
because we're insecure or whatever, right? But jiu-jitsu is one of those things that instantly there's a vulnerability in
Yeah.
in just participating in it. And so that common vulnerability amongst everybody is kind of that first step to being able to get a little deeper, peel the layers of that onion back, so to speak.
It's the most important thing that I think, people can do, right? Like, I met my girl at jiu-jitsu. Her two kids were starting. She was going through a divorce. Just watching the kids grow over the last few years through our community. Ben Shapiro said something last week that it's not about a man being in the home. Like, you know, we talk about single motherhood, not just about a man being in the home. It's about a community of men being around.
Yep.
And so you bring kids into that environment and you give them, and it's something my parents did really well, is I was always talking to older people, you know, those kids being around all these older people, like, has now put them in a position where they have all of these examples to look after. What you're saying about weirdos and vulnerability, when you're a kid, like, everyone's always so concerned about who can beat who up, right? Like, it's like, oh, you know, my dad can beat up your dad. And like at the gym, talk about vulnerability, man, like, I know who can beat me up. And like, you know, there's a humbling aspect to that, but there's also a self-confidence in the fact that, you know, me and him, you know, maybe sometimes it might even be me and her, you know, she might be the one beating me up, whoever her is. You know, there's a vulnerability of like, dude, we were talking about Lauren's got me in arm bars, right? And there's a vulnerability of knowing that these people, you know, can beat you up, and then peeling back the layers of there's no activity where you can get closer to another human being. There's simply not. There's no social distancing there. There's your you know, cheek to cheek, your stomach to stomach, you know, it's a very personal sport. And there's also the act of, you know, at the end of that, you're spent. So all of the bullshit going on that happened during your day, or all the bullshit that's going on up here, you know, it disappears, at least for a moment. And, you know, you sit out back and you have those conversations with your boys and the girls. And, you know, that's the important thing about life. I mean, having conversations is, you know, the most enriching thing that we do.
Yeah, we don't do it enough.
No. I mean, it is what we are, right? You know, as a species, there was a lot more sitting around and talking, I think, throughout our history, which is why we're also drawn to podcasts. It's why it's nice to go for a walk and listen to a podcast. It's nice to be in your car and listen to a podcast. Like, you're getting to, and you get to sit with people. If you found the right podcast you're listening to, you get to sit with people who are like you in a way that moves you forward, and you know, and helps you figure out your path.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing tool, and you know, just having a community of jiu-jitsu people is super valuable.
Yeah. No, if you're willing to listen and take in a lot of different, I mean, podcasts, there's so many different viewpoints and data sets that you can take in. I've learned more in 3 or 4 years of podcasting than I could have learned in 10 or 12 years of college, probably
100%.
more. It's not
100%.
possible, because the time that I spent going to college, I didn't finish, so it was kind of already a negative thing, right? Like, it's just, to your point, you want to accomplish things in life. It took me a while, but ultimately, when I started to succeed in spite of college, I was able to use that in my story, because I kind of looked at that and said, you know what, in spite of making a bad decision and trying to go into something that I probably shouldn't have, I've been able to overcome that. But prior to that, it was a negative, right? And
yeah. What do you feel like? Do you feel like, you know, I have this feeling too, is that, like, do you feel like just sitting around, not sitting around, let's not say just sitting around, like, my ideal for, like, the boys, you know, isn't college anymore. It's like, hey, jiu-jitsu costs $2,000 a year, right? I mean, let's just look at ROI, right? Jiu-jitsu costs $2,000 a year. There's a certain amount of books that you can read. There's a certain amount of podcasts you can listen to. And if you want to go to school later and you want to make that kind of investment because you want to be an engineer and you need the engineering degree, but you don't need, you're on that path and you've decided, go then. But like the idea that we're putting ourselves, that you can get $100,000 loan at 18, but you can't get $100,000 loan at 30 for a business. That idea is crazy. Is that we're putting people in this position where, man, it's untenable, and it's a form of like slavery. Like, slavery is a strong word. So let's, understand when I say that, everyone listening, like, I'm not saying they're the same thing, but you get this debt over you. I remember this one guy I know had $1,000 every month he had to pay off. That's like rent. He had to pay off a rent for a degree. And there he's sitting every month, and what that also means is that you need to go out and you need to take a job, whatever job will do that. And
I'll
now,
one I'll one better you. Sorry to cut you off, but
no, feel
I have
free.
so I had an advisor
Yeah.
who advised me to take out more money that I could because I didn't have the ability to work a job because I was playing baseball.
Where'd you
So,
play? Where'd you go to school too?
University of Pittsburgh and Bradford. So
Nice.
D3 hometown. But
Yeah.
I mean, imagine that, right?
Yeah.
I had an advisor tell me, well, I know you can't work, but you're able to take out more money.
Right.
Now, fuck the fact that you got to pay it back and that the government's going to subsidize it. So,
Yep.
it's all good. You won't ever get out from underneath that money. You're going to pay it.
Yeah.
And, hey, by the way, you're not really doing well. Are you sure college is for you? No, it was the opposite. So, when you ask that question, I would strongly discourage traditional college experience from
Yeah.
my son. And I just had a son. He'll be a
Well,
year old here.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, he'll be a year old here in September. I will discourage if he just wants to go away to have the quote unquote college experience if he doesn't have a plan and it's not going to benefit him, because anymore, I think you're at no advantage to have a watered down bachelor's of science in something.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be an engineer and you get an engineering degree, that's probably a really smart idea. If you want to be a
Yeah.
doctor or a lawyer, you should probably study those things, but those are very specific pursuits.
And you better know you want to do it.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
those are long-term things too,
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in sales over 12 years and worked my way up. I worked for a company that was acquired by IBM. So I spent time in both startup as well as like big corporate organizations. And I was blown away when I understood that people who had multiple degrees, who had done everything that you would think is quote unquote correct through academia, couldn't find their way out of a wet paper bag because they had no life experience. They had no understanding on how to problem solve. And that matters. And when you
School doesn't teach you that.
yeah, not at all. Right. So I would certainly be open minded. I don't want to come across like a complete idiot. It's not like school and education is bad, but we're also talking about 18 years from now as well. And I don't think that colleges will be anything in resemblance to what they are. I think there's going to be a huge wake up call, not only for America in terms of the economy itself, but colleges, universities are going to just fall apart. They're already overpriced, and now the demand is going to reduce significantly. And what happens? What then occurs?
A lot of these schools are going to disappear.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed is that like a bunch of these athletic programs are getting rid of, like Stanford got rid of 11 sports. They already talked about getting rid of 11 sports. Stanford is not some school that doesn't have the money, right? So I think these are a reflection of like, hey, like it's time to start buckling down. And one of the real issues I have with like kind of like the dialogue about like, student loan forgiveness now and like the public sphere is that I approve of the principle, but the reality of the situation is, who are we getting the money from, right? We're going to have like the taxpayers pay it back, but like what the same people who are saying we need loan forgiveness right now are also the people who like, the lifetime politicians, whether they're on the right or the left, who put us in this position where we were giving these federal loans that then made all their friends in academia, money. I mean, how many of these schools kept hiring six-figure administrators because they just kept getting this steady stream of money that really the middle class was getting like heavily screwed on, where it's like, if you're poor, we'll figure out some sort of financial aid package and scholarship. Maybe, at Rhode Island, there was a talent development program for a lot of kids that were smart, but may have not had the means to go. And then there's, the rich yuppie, kid from, New York or whatever. I even forget what yuppie means. That's an
young urban professional.
No. Like the kid, like the kids of like the kids from like right around New York, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, and then you got the middle class, and the middle class is the one taking out those big loans. And it's like, And that's kind of like a recurring theme we kind of keep seeing, is that, like, it's tough to be in the middle class in America today.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that the economy was doing as well as everybody thought that it was,
Right.
and it wasn't. I think COVID popped a giant balloon that was already about ready to explode, and I think it just made it happen a little quicker. And I
Yeah.
think that's what people aren't going to understand. They're expecting things to get better because COVID's going to get better, but in fact, I suspect it's going to get a lot worse for a lot of people in terms of
Yeah.
inflation, in
Yeah.
terms of how we're going to pay back all this money that, I don't know how else you solve the problem. I mean, you shut the world down. I think maybe the first step is don't shut the world down,
Yeah.
you
That's,
know,
yeah.
maybe allow people to try to make some sort of income. But
Yeah.
when you do, now it's on you. Now it is on your ass to try to like help keep people afloat and alive, because I think there's just as much damage that could have been done by not extending somebody at least the ability to pay their mortgage. I mean, what's the loss of
No,
life in that situation? It's probably
that
a
was
lot more than a cough.
that's yeah, a lot more than a cough. That was my thing from the jump, because being like, having my history of addiction, right, is that I knew addictions were going to go up. I knew suicides were going to go up. We saw all of these things go up. We see, the data is coming out now, and it's data that you and I could have told people at the outset of March, which was, this thing better be as bad as people say it is, or else the cost is going, not better be, but if you're what you're proposing is going to have really large costs. And so, and that's kind of the beef I see. The beef I've had with media is like just a lot of people out there that are working from home that don't understand the cost. Because one thing about being in a jiu-jitsu gym is the diversity of the people.
Yeah.
Is that, you're gonna meet people that have every kind of lifestyle, every kind of background. And so you understand how things are going to start impacting the people within your community. So as a journalist, right, like I don't consider myself a journalist. I consider myself a writer, right? But like, as the location of like being a part of the community that I am, like, I feel like I'm really keyed into what's going on with a wide variety of people, and how things that are going on right now are really impacting people. My community is also, 10th Planet's nationwide, worldwide. So, I'm having conversations with people in New York and Oregon and all these other places. And, it's just I mean, like, for every 1% of the unemployment goes up, like 37,000 people die, or like are tied to that. I saw early on.
Yeah. I mean, listen, dude, I don't want to minimize it at all. There's people who have
Right.
lost people. I get it, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
real sickness, but people die all the time. And I just have a real hard time swallowing this pill
Yeah.
where we have all these people who are so, I think their hearts are in the right place.
They are.
I want to be
They
honest, right?
are.
I think people's intentions for the most part are all in the right place. But like, where the fuck have you been on cigarettes?
Mm.
Where, like, let's just talk about that, right? There's
Yeah.
like literally hundreds of thousands of people that die every year. Now we have a government that told people, shut your business down. Sorry,
Yeah.
you might want to kill yourself. Shut your
Yeah.
business down.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Yeah.
matter. They can do that. They proved that they've did it for 6 months. They've shut
Yeah.
fucking businesses down.
Yeah.
But they've allowed cigarettes to be sold year after year in every store on every corner. That's not just affecting people's own decisions. Look, you want to smoke? I believe you should be allowed to smoke. So let's just get that clear. You want to smoke? Smoke.
If you
But
want to do anything that doesn't hurt anyone, you can do
yeah,
it.
but
Yeah.
there's also an argument that cigarette smoking can kill a lot of secondhand users as well. And I grew up in
Yeah.
a household where both of my parents smoked. So
Me too.
you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure I've suffered some of that damage. And
Yeah.
but my point being, where the fuck have you been? Where have you all been? You just jumped on board this virus, which I get it. It's hurting people. We all should take steps. But where have you been? Where have you been on texting and driving? Because you're probably bitching about a mask right now while you're fucking cruising down the road texting on your phone, and how many people are killed through, like, the logic that is missing from people, that's just overwhelmed. It's like people take every ounce of physical logic that they have, anything, and they
Yeah.
throw it all into this one area. And I
Yeah.
just have to ask, where has it been?
Where is it on obesity? Like I said about the Sports Illustrated, like Sports Illustrated keeps trying, all these places, all these media outlets try and tell us like being overweight is okay. Being overweight is not being at your optimal. That period. It's okay. I
Again, wait,
still
you're going into the nuance right now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
right.
because
Well, this is why I'm excited. I'm starting to do. We have a lot of people come through our gym, so I'm starting to do podcasts and just hearing you talk and just you said something somewhere in there that was similar to something that I've said. It sounds way nicer in words than it does in type. So
yeah,
I'm not going to say I'm not part of the problem sometimes too, right? Is that I like being on Twitter. I like shooting something off that might be a little bit cutting, and things like that.
stir the pot a little bit.
I love stirring the pot, bro. I love stirring the pot. That's what I'm here for. But I mean, but that's kind of how guys like, that's how we talk to each other at the gym. Two of my best friends from the gym, we've been together for 3.5 years. We say the meanest shit to each other, right? Because that's how we know we love each other.
If you
And
could
so,
see the text strings that my three brothers and I have, it's
exactly.
brutal, right? But then
Right,
again,
right.
they're the people that you love the most.
Right. So, I mean, I might go a little too hard, and my nickname is Go Hard. So, I mean, that is what I'm, it's the nickname from the mat. And I think, it perfectly describes me out in the world. But, the conversation aspect and what's exciting to me is I'm going to do 10 PATX chats, I think we're going to call it. But we've got the system in place now. We're going to start doing the podcast. We're going to have people come through and our coaches and have these kind of conversations and just getting better at just having a space to do that, and to hopefully further the dialogue through words, through our voices rather than through typing it, because it does allow us to get to that next level of nuance where it's like one of the things I really want to dig home with people, right, is that if we did everything that our culture tells us to do, and this is why, what I want people to understand is our culture is broken and people understand it, but they don't internalize it, right? So it's like, I don't really watch Netflix that much anymore. We've been watching older movies with the boys. We watched Groundhog Day the other week. I'm watching my girlfriend's a little bit bored by it, Passion of the Christ, but I'm trying to watch, like, I watched The Patriot with the oldest the other week, and it's
Great
like,
movie.
right, and it's like, and that was kind of, it was after I got in trouble with my publisher, but it's like these guys got their houses burned down, they had people murdered, and you're telling me that to stand up for speech and to stand on the what I feel is the right side of an issue and to stand against the mob that is just picking people out and just saying, you disagree, you need to go, and to stand against that, all I have to give up is a book deal with somebody I didn't want to do business with anyway, that I didn't trust to have my intentions in the best way anyway. So that's all I got to give up. But you realize when you watch older movies that the messaging of older movies was stronger. And what you also realize about so many people moving toward podcasts is that people are seeking out the truth and they know they're not getting it through the normal places. Because if you watched pop culture and if you listen to the media and you ate what people told you you're supposed to eat, you'd be overweight. Because I did it when I was done playing football. I was like, oh, this is a normal American diet. I can go have a cheeseburger because this is what that triangle we grew up with said. And I made excuses for myself too. And I was like, I still look good. I still look good. And I was like gaining weight and I wasn't healthy and I wasn't feeling good. So I've been there. I've been on that side of, I was up to 200 pounds. Now I'm 165, right? And I've never been in better shape, even when I was playing football, like, because jiu-jitsu does that to you. And then it's also like you're collecting data on every roll and you're like, man, I'm not feeling that strong lately. I better push up my lifting. I'm feeling tight. I'm feeling sore. I better do more yoga. I better incorporate that in the morning. My cardio is not that great. I better either up a little bit. You're collecting data, you're bringing it back, you're working on it. And like, that's one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu is that the truth is either you win or you lose. So if you lose, then the truth is you need to do something different. Whether that's, and then I'm also neglecting with what I just said, the mental side, right? But like so many people, are being influenced by something that is really poisonous. Like the culture that we have right now is, I mean, we have Hollywood movies that are making sure they don't offend China so that they can go over there and they can make as much money as possible.
They make like separate movies, like different scenes entirely.
Top Gun straight took Japan off of his arm or whatever of like the nations that were cool with whatever, the allied nations. They took Japan off the arm to not anger China. And it's like the whole point of this American experiment, right? And what we're supposed to do and what Hollywood claimed that, what Hollywood once was about, it was about taking our values and bringing them elsewhere. And that's what our culture is supposed to be about. But what we're seeing is a lot of these people are taking Chinese values or communist values or whatever and bringing them here. And because there's no difference, there is a difference, but philosophically, walk with me on this. There's no difference between, you're saying communists like Stalin, they'll kill you, they'll put you in the gulag, they'll whatever, they'll off you, they'll send you away. The communists today that we have in our culture will try and take your job from you if you disagree. They will literally, and that's exactly what my situation proved to me, which is exactly, they gave me the soapbox. They made me I used them the same way Colin Kaepernick used the NFL to prove my point, which was that you're not going to allow alternative speech here. And I don't want to be a part of your game anymore because I've already taken poison. I was an addict. I've already taken poison. I'm not going to be a part of the poison game anymore. I'm not going to sell poison. I'm not going to take poison. I'm just going to live out the truth as much as I can. And, that's what I felt like I was standing up against, which was like, we have this mob in this country. I mean, I had people, all I tweeted exactly as we said. I said, I'm sure.
What is it that you said? I'm sorry. We should have got into that.
Okay. So like I first said, I saw one guy, this guy I follow. He does good work. He does good football work. I actually mentioned him in my book. He does good enough work that I utilize some of the stuff he does for my book, and I'm going to leave it in there. I'm not going to take his name out. I have respect for the work he does. But, I saw like another video of like, shit going down. And it was right after 10th Planet Long Beach got burned to the ground by protesters and rioters. And I was like, and I trolled him. I was like, hey, hopefully these were some of the guys that if they get arrested, maybe you can help bail them out. And so then I got in a little tussle with him. My publisher didn't like that. They gave me a call. Like I got called into the principal's office and all that kind of stuff. Right. Yeah. And I had that same feeling, right? I went through, I got an email. I went and I deleted the tweets and I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm in trouble. Don't worry guys. I deleted them and I'm sorry. And then I realized, what the fuck am I doing? Sorry to curse. I'm not sure, but I was like, what am I doing? I was like, what am I doing? I'm an adult. I'm 30 now. I'm an adult. I don't listen to another adult tell me as an adult what I can say. And so a few days later, after talking to them, they were just like, yeah, just don't tweet directly at people. Don't get into arguments with them. And I got in an argument with someone else a few days later where I was just like, what you're saying is demonstrably false. Here's why. And then he was like, oh, well, this and that. And he was name calling. And I was like, okay, what you're saying is wrong. And here's why. And then simultaneously, I found an article that pointed out that the Antifa and Antifa, New York, and then this Minnesota Freedom Fund, they had the same lawyers, right? And I tweeted that out. And then Sean Davis from the Federalist, he sometimes gets retweeted by Trump. He's like a big conservative guy. He retweeted that and like 100,000 people saw it because there were like 500 retweets and 500 favorites. So now all of a sudden my publisher had what they saw as a big issue on their hands because now my DMs were filled with people like, I hope you're eating out of a garbage can next week, and you're a racist, and you're a this, and it's like those games when you know who you are, like these names they don't work anymore, and that's kind of what we all gotta learn about the woke mob is that if you're comfortable with yourself, like the game doesn't work. If you just don't care, the game doesn't work. If you figure out how to move your career forward on your own without somebody who might be above you being like, oh, you're done. And that's kind of unfortunately where we find ourselves is that if we're going to have these conversations that are on the fringe of what's allowed, which is a continuously smaller space, we're going to have to be independent. But in reality, being a part of the media too is they're the most untrusted group in the country. I mean, every poll that comes out says, 7% of Americans trust Congress, but 6% trust the media, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know where I would go right now if I wanted real factual information. I think that I don't know if there's a single place that I could trust. I would go to multiple different places. And I
Yeah.
think based on a multitude of what I consider trusted sources, I would make my own opinion. But
Yeah.
I think I've seen bullshit come out of every place, no
Every
matter.
place and everybody. I mean, we're all just trying to figure it out too, right? I mean, so I'm sympathetic to
Yep.
some of it, right? But there seems to be like a systematic level of bullshit, or maybe a systemic level of bullshit within these institutions now, where it's just like, I mean, if you listen to something from a mainstream outlet and then just said to yourself, what if I just believe the exact opposite of what they said? A lot of the times you'd be closer to the truth. Like that's a wild thing to say, but like some percentage of the times you're kind of closer to the truth. I mean, like NPR put out a headline today that about the guy in Austin who tragically got shot, and these outlets know that people aren't clicking through on Twitter links, right? So Cernovich had like a funny 3 screenshot thing where he's like, they know you're not going to click through, so here's what they put as the headline, and then here in paragraph 3 they say, oh, he had an AK-47. The AK-47 part's in the headline. Okay, that should be in the headline, but it's not. It's like a driver drives in, shoots a protester, and then that's what's spread and that's what's propagated, and that creates more division and less nuance and less truth, which then, puts us guys like us in a position where it's like, we can't support the movement where we believe the same things they believe though.
And you're a bad person because you've been willing to look just a layer deeper and
Mm-hmm.
put some things together. Not that you're against the message that everybody
No,
wants to be for. It's just,
no.
hey, I'm doing my own investigation, and I'm not just taking anything that comes my way as fact.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's, kind of like to bring it around to like the football stuff is that, I try to look at things super objective. I mean, super objective. I mean, I do my best, right? We all do our best to look at things objectively. And, part of what I set out to do with football was I wanted to write a book that was just kind of like, here's how you build an organization. And I set out on that path. I looked at data. I looked at, how Super Bowl teams spent their money. And now and one thing that I have to thank my publisher for, and I have to thank, I say thank you to my editor. My editor probably had no part in all this stuff. Katie Moreau was her name. She did a fantastic job. I have a great, I have a great book that I'm going to publish, and I'm thankful to the publisher. I'll say their name, Triumph Books. I'm thankful they gave me an opportunity, and I to take a nuanced perspective. I appreciate and understand the fact that in the sports world, they felt pressure to not work with me because of other business relationships they had. So like the NFL, they made a business decision based on the views that I have, just like the NFL made business decision based on the views that Colin Kaepernick had. And that's fine. That's all well and good. And I understand that. And I appreciate the opportunity they gave me to write a second edition of this book, because now I've become a better writer. And I really just kind of dug into like, this edition of the book is like kind of like a history of the game through to today. And then I have, the same meat as the first book, which was here's how you spend money at these positions. And I have a little bit more of an emphasis on analytics and stuff in the beginning, the history of analytics, the history of the game, the minds that shaped the game and innovated the game. And then I talk about spending, and then I go on, here's where the game's going into the future. And
So
so,
is it fair for me to assume that you probably are a guy who thinks that Belichick is more responsible for the Patriots dynasty than Brady?
yeah, I mean, there's some data that actually data from one of the guys I got in an argument with. Belichick's put together a roster from like '06 to some time span, right? It was like '06 to 19, right? And the roster he built around Brady added 77 wins. Like, so there was like an average, like they did wins above replacement, and they put together all these factors, and they figured out that the real big factor about Brady's like lower cost contracts over the last few years the major factor within that is that like Belichick's also put people around Brady that are just phenomenal, like values, right? They've for the last 3 years, they've led the NFL in players making basically veteran players making under $5 million. So I think last year they may have had 31 or maybe the year before. So that's a 53-man roster. And the reality is that you build your roster through the draft, and then you hopefully extend those players when they come of age to get extended. And you give them, those are the guys you want to sign. You don't want to sign big money guys outside of like your core guys. And then you go out and you have the role players around them that are experienced, that are, if you're in the NFL, if you're in your 6th, 7th, 8th year in the NFL, there's a lot of experience behind that. And I kind of look at that the same way I look at a black belt, right? Is that like these, like he's not relying on like the undrafted rookie to play special teams for him. He's paying that guy, Matt Slater, $2.5 million a year to run down on special teams and make plays, because special teams takes up X percentage of the game snaps, right? And so there's all these sorts of ways that he spent money, and whether it's safety, linebacker, tight end, he understands the positions where, hey, this guy is, this is a position that's being undervalued by the market. Let's invest some money there. And then, we're going to get a big return on that rather than investing money in, say, wide receiver, right? He traditionally hasn't done that.
So
and defensive end.
Can I argue the opposite for you?
Okay.
So here's, and I think everything you just said is so valid. My argument as to why I still think Brady over Belichick in that scenario is, I'll always give a nod to the guy that has to go out and perform.
Yes.
But more so than that, I think there's other coaches and GMs and combinations of coaches and GMs who can leverage data and could come to the same conclusions that Bill Belichick can come to. Yes. I think that he's still upper echelon, and I don't think that there's all across the board everybody's able to do that. I think it is a select few. But my vision of this would be that Tom Brady is a very essential piece for Belichick to execute on all of those things. I think a lot of other coaches and GMs can't execute on those ideas because they don't have a quarterback who's unselfish, who would be willing to restructure and constantly, you can, whatever you want to say, that he put Belichick in a rough spot. But year after year, Tom Brady was somebody who, really did a tremendous benefit to that organization by how he handled his contracts. I also think that other guys were willing to take a lot less money to come and play for a guy 100%. Play with a guy like Tom Brady. And so I think when you take all of that in there, and you also have a guy in Tom who's willing to take the message of the organization and be the example, not the middle linebacker, the quarterback embodies Belichick's message, which makes it easy for you to have a Chad Ochocinco come in and say, "Oh, sorry, not you. Oh, Randy Moss, best combination of wide receiver. Sorry, it doesn't matter. And here's why. There's more value in me holding firm to my beliefs because I know I'll never have a quarterback that wavers. He'll always stand behind me, and we're going to create a culture which is the missing ingredient that I think a lot of really successful teams are missing, right? They don't have that underlying culture, whether it's because guys leave or there's not strong leadership inside the locker room. I think the Steelers are for me, being in Pittsburgh, the Steelers are a big example of that. I don't know what the fuck went on, but there's just void of leadership in some way, shape, or form in a lot of layers of that organization. And people might hate me for saying it, but prove me wrong. I mean, that place is a dumpster fire at times. But I
like what you're saying.
I think Brady gave essentially Belichick that opportunity to do what he does, which is unreal. But I don't think he could do it. No. Yeah, I get it. You can do it 1 year with Matt Castle because the underlying foundation was built. But I think if you had somebody else come in there, even Matt Stafford, who I think is unbelievably talented, unreal tools. But if you brought him in there, I don't think that the Patriots end up where they do, and not because of a lack of talent, but because of just that intangible that Tom Brady brings to the table.
It's exactly, it ties into all the other stuff we're talking about, right? Which is part of what's so fascinating to me about when I look outside, or not outside, but when I look at the world right now, it feels like there's this huge game going on. Like all the sports stopped and we're watching like whatever this event that's going on right now is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's making us think about all these things like culture, and it's making us think about, especially over the last 2 months, we've been thinking a lot about culture. And then to tie into the jiu-jitsu, like I've been a part of, at the University of Rhode Island, we had a really good head coach my freshman year, but then they wanted to keep the staff together. He left to go to the NFL, and they wanted to keep the staff together, and it just wasn't the same culture. And we didn't have a great culture, but now I'm at a gym that has a great culture, and I'm watching us flourish into something more. Like I feel like I really believe that we're going to be one of the best MMA gyms in the world, like within short order, not a long time. And Brady and Belichick, it's not one or the other. It's both of them, because it's like Brady is a Derek Jeter type of person, right? Like I'm a Yankee fan growing up. And one of the things that really drew me around to really enjoying watching the Patriots and really enjoying like the last few years of the Brady Belichick era and really kind of rooting for them is that I've watched what I feel is like this just like Jeter. I mean, it's just like Jeter never does anything wrong. Tom Brady never does anything wrong. They're just good guys. They seem to whatever they're doing from a leadership perspective works, and they both created cultures within those organizations and expectations. Because the Yankees, when Jeter came along, the Yankees weren't the Yankees that they were when Jeter left.
Right.
So it had been, I was a huge Yankee fan growing up. So my dad would tell me about the 80s were terrible. The early 90s were terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Jeter came along, and, the rest of those guys, Rivera, Posada, and Bernie Williams, and, Pettit, right? And the culture grew, and it's those core guys like Brady and Belichick's a piece of that, because, with all this cap stuff, I mean, much of what I'm writing about is what did Bill Walsh understand about the game to push it forward? What did Paul Brown do? And then it's like there's a chapter that discusses when the Patriots and Eagles were bought by Robert Kraft and Jeffrey Lurie, and how they then built their organizations. And then the Patriots had their results, 6 Super Bowls. The Eagles just got their first a couple years ago. But, both of these guys, there was a lot to learn from them, and there's more than anything, there's a lot to learn from Belichick himself. And so, but the reality though is that without Tom Brady, a lot of this stuff's probably not. I mean, they're not getting 6 Super Bowls without being together. They were a perfect marriage, and now Brady's on to something else. Maybe there's some behind the scenes stuff that we're not sure about. But hey, a 20-year relationship in any place is you made it long enough for the kid to get to college, right? If it's a marriage, right? So I mean, they had a 20-year marriage, and it was a great marriage for 20 years. And
if we get to see football, I'm excited to see how this season plays out.
Me too. I am excited to see, getting to dig into this my manuscript again. I kind of put it aside for a little bit because I got the email about the contract being terminated the same day I finished editing the final version for them, which is hilarious. So I kind of put the book aside for a little bit, but now I'm going to come back to it so I can maybe edit it one more time before I release it. And, it got me excited again to just, I don't need to watch every football game like I used to feel like I did. But, hey, Tampa Bay Buccaneers in prime time, the Patriots in prime time, seeing what happens with the Ravens and the Chiefs. There's a lot of really good storylines coming this year. The 49ers are a great one as well. They're an organization that does things the right way, really, from a cap perspective and stuff. And it's exciting.
I'm a Bills fan. I grew up a Bills fan. So I actually grew up like
you have to be a little excited.
Yeah. An hour south of Buffalo, right on the New York State PA line. So
okay.
And like right in the 4-year chunk when Jim Kelly and the Bills went to 4 Super Bowls in a
row,
yeah. I would argue that their partying was a big reason why they didn't win, at least from the folklore in our neck of the woods, but maybe that's just optimistic thinking. But yeah, man, we see Brady twice a year, or used to see Brady twice a year.
I know.
And it pains me to say it, but damn, best quarterback that's ever played the game. So here's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
If you had $1 million of cash sitting right in front of you, and you had to tell me we would know the full story about what's going on with these programs with UFOs and the government.
All right.
Or the whole deck of cards with Epstein, what do you think
Oh,
happens first?
bro, give me Epstein. Give me Epstein. I want to know. I'm telling you, I want to know the whole operation. I hear all the stuff about like the Mossad, and he was a part of intelligence, and I heard the stories about. He, someone tried to arrest him at some point, or someone tried to look into him, and it was like, no, he's above your pay grade. He's intelligence. I want to know. I want to know like what kind of blackmail he had on people, and how he utilized that blackmail to get what he wants. Because
You
I
saw the
feel
documentary, right?
I saw about half of it. It was a lot of stuff that I understood, and it was
That you
way
knew,
too.
right?
Yeah, it was way too much focused on like I was into like deep into the second episode, and they were still talking about these young girls giving him a massage, and I was like, all right, let's move on to like let's talk about like who he was hanging out with or something. Did you see the
Yeah,
whole thing?
I did. I watched all of them, and to me, the thing that blew my mind more than anything, to your point, like it actually made it more real to me because I think what it did, and maybe this was intentional, they they really crafted it around a handful of very rock solid cases of just straight up sexual assault. I mean, let's call it what it is. He raped
Yeah,
young girls who were coming from West Palm and being recruited by other
yeah.
girls
Well,
to
girls that had an incentive, girls that were
yeah,
not as wealthy. I mean, he went to the poorer community that right there, and he said,
yeah.
"Hey, we've got money for you. Come on over." And then he played with it because when you're a kid, you can be manipulated
The
because you
one
don't.
girl, the
That brought 18 girls or something like that.
well, yeah, but and the one girl said she flat out says that Prince Andrew raped her.
100%. Amanda
And
Jeffrey or something
then
like
the
that.
other guy's like, I saw Bill Clinton sitting on the front porch. And I mean, I, man, what I left with the most though was where did his money come from? Because they
Less
really
Rex.
got into, the property in Manhattan. They talked about
Yep.
his ranch in New Mexico. They talked about
Yeah.
his condo or his flat in Paris. They talked about his island and the infrastructure. He had full-time
Yeah.
employees that were managing his own Wi-Fi towers. And
Yeah.
where does that volume of capital come from without people really truly being able to put their finger on it? Because it's like, oh no, he was the money manager to the wealthiest of the wealthy. Well, I mean, even that doesn't add up to me.
No.
Like, I don't see that.
Dude, like Les Wexner is the big piece. He's the guy I think that's kind of at the head of it. I mean, he just
You
gifted
say
it.
that.
What was that?
It's so funny you bring that up.
I think he's the guy because he's the one who he gave Epstein that building, the 41 bedroom estate in Manhattan, which who knows how much that's worth, right? And he gave him that. And then, he had the whole Victoria's Secret thing too, which, I mean, remember when we were kids, every girl's going to Victoria's Secret to get stuff. And
See,
it's like,
I didn't know that. Now, dude,
yeah,
so wait, yeah, we need to talk offline because there's some things that really fucking freak me out
yeah,
now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And so he was recruiting girls. Ghislaine was recruiting girls. They were going to schools, and like they were trying to find smart girls. The other thing is he's a eugenicist as well. So he wanted to create his own little cult of Epstein children. And here's the other reality that Brett Weinstein, who also discussed the idea that this came out of a lab, COVID came out of a lab, right? The other reality is that Weinstein didn't know Epstein very well. So, but the first time he met him, within a couple minutes, he knew this dude was like some old dude who liked to hook up with 18, 19 questionable age girls.
Yeah.
And so, like, because Epstein would just had this like young girl bouncing on his lap. He just was like kind of like showing off, like, hey, I've got this young girl who doesn't know any. I mean, an 18-year-old girl with a 55-year-old man who's surrounded by the world's elite. I mean, that is a twisted reality, right? And it's just people knew what Epstein was about, but they didn't care because the reality is these people never thought they were going to get caught.
Yeah. Wasn't there a painting he had commissioned that hung inside of that mansion
Bro.
or in the place in Manhattan that was Bill Clinton in Monica Lewinsky's dress?
Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky's dress, which as we can allude to, feels like he's saying like, you're my bitch. It
Yeah.
feels like and then he's got George Bush with Jenga towers and a paper airplane. He's got weird art, but I mean, if we want to talk about weird art, no one's got weirder art than the Podestas, right? You ever seen the Podestas art? That's a whole nother podcast, dog. Like Anderson Cooper, like there's a weird Anderson Cooper art piece. It looks like him as a child, and it looks like the pool in his parents' basement. And then I see Anderson Cooper and Bill Gates on Twitter today, and they're talking about like all this stuff about vaccines and the pandemic, and they both look kind of flustered. And he's like, all these conspiracies on Anderson's like, all of these conspiracies online are crazy about you. How does it make you feel?
And I know. Well, Bill Gates is just that guy that's been wearing a button-up cardigan for how long? I mean, dude,
bro,
that guy's a ruthless businessman. He ran Microsoft. He always was. Yeah, I mean, he was the richest man in the world. He was Bezos before Bezos, and now he's like in khakis and he's so soft-spoken and man, I don't know.
It's this woke capitalism rebranding. It's just, and that's like the most fascinating thing. It's a thing I'm obsessed with right now, is like figuring out all of these things that are going on, like all of like the woke capitalism and all the narratives and all the players. And, oh, there goes the cat. All the players that are involved, and just trying to figure it all out is the most fascinating part about all this for me right now.
I got an interesting message on my phone while we've been talking, and I don't know if it's true or not. Oh, my mom sent it to me, so it's probably not. It says Tom Hanks is missing.
Tom Hanks is missing?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not true. My mom sent it to me. Never mind. I was like, who sent this to me? My mom's deep into it. In a way, I love it. I love it.
Dude, I wish my mom was that deep into it.
Oh my! She'll call me. She's like, "Hey, are you aware of Pizzagate? Do you know what Pizzagate is?" And I'm like, "Mom, oh God, don't do this to me." But I see no remnants of like normalcy. So like, because of that, maybe it is time to figure out a new way. And that's that's why I'm doing this. Like talking about using COVID in this shakedown. It was like
you just started this, and you released quite a few episodes on May 24th, right?
Yeah.
And then you'd been cataloging them.
Yeah. So my brother and I did a podcast in the cannabis space, but we did it on site, on location, in person. And when my son was born, and we took a little bit of a pause coming into the new year, and then COVID hit, and he's in LA and I'm in Pittsburgh, and I was flying back and forth every week, and it just got to be too much. And so then it became impossible. And I was like, I got to continue to talk. I've got to get my voice out there. I want to have conversations. I want to learn new things. I want to challenge my ideas. I want to talk to people like you. And I was like, fuck it, let's do this. And it's been a blast. Yeah,
dude. I think the positive that needs to come out of it, because when COVID was going on, before all the riots and stuff like that, when we were in like April and May, I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to get through this. And like the lessons we're going to take out of it, and the lessons we're still taking from the riots, I was a lot more positive in May. Then once I saw the George, obviously we all saw the video. We didn't like the video. And then when I saw the response to it was super divisive, I was like, no one liked the video. No one was okay with that video. Everyone was wrong with that video. And then you see the way things kind of spiraled out of control, because I'm on the page you're on too, which is like, I'm hoping that the thing that comes out of this is monumental change within our system, because our system doesn't serve people. It's not like Black Lives Matter. It's not just black people. Like, it's like this system doesn't serve anybody.
Well, like we don't teach. No, sorry to interrupt you. It's so hard with Zoom. You know what I mean? But like,
don't worry.
It's corny to say, but like, we don't teach civics.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't, like, as a high school kid, my brother and I'm the oldest of four, right? My youngest brother is 10 years younger than I am.
So he's 23.
And I know for a fact that he wasn't taught the same things that I was taught in school. He didn't. He had to learn all these things on his own, and I'm so thankful that he's maturing into somebody who's very he looks into things. He's very much a curious individual, and we don't learn that stuff. We don't understand how society is supposed to work. We have all these people that are like, the government should do this, or they should pay for that, or does people understand the government doesn't have money? People don't know that though. So like the thing that bothers me is in a way, how do you fault people for making decisions when they're basically getting 52 cards and they're all face cards, and they're like, oh, like, okay, yeah, I can just win in war all the time because I always have a king, a queen, or jack. And then it's like, well, no, that's not real. Those aren't real
Yeah.
cards. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's
The
not how
money's not real.
yeah. And
Yeah, yeah. If we keep doing things the wrong way, like the money doesn't matter. Like what you were saying too earlier about about the economy not being as good as Trump was touting the economy, right? The underlying issue with the economy is that like we don't make anything here. We're not like we don't have all the manufacturing, and that's what pissed me off so much about seeing all these corporations with the all the woke politics that they do, is that they left the country, they left all of these workers behind, and then they get involved in these these movements, and then they tell people, and like we said, we approve of like some kind of the system's not serving people, but the movement itself is has been inherently divisive, right? And in a lot of ways, and it's not just the movement, it's the people around the movement. You hear a lot of the rhetoric people are using about just like white people. Like you hear it from like professors, you hear it from journalists. It's like, it's not your time to speak, but at the same time you should be speaking. We just want I think you said it. Yeah, you said it, was that it's not that we want to hear our opinion out of your mouth.
yeah, they don't want to hear your opinion. They want to hear
No.
their opinion come out of your mouth.
Yes, yes. And like the reality is that these corporations left, and they left a lot of people behind, and no one has replaced those jobs, which has then put us in this scenario where we're all trying to get those white collar jobs that are, we're going to college, we're racking up debt, and then we get out, and a whole generation is like, wait, where's the job I was promised? I did everything I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping for a revolution too of some kind. I'm just hoping it's the revolution that serves all of us.
You get one shot at one.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
look at history, is always tells the tale, man. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of history outside of just what's in people's Twitter feeds, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
history says that we're about at that point, that inflection point as a country, where this thing tends to happen. And I think to that point, you have to really be firm and believe what you believe in. And I think that's where we're in trouble. There's a lot of people that don't know what they believe in.
No.
They're not rooted in anything. They don't stand for anything.
Yep.
And whether it's something that I agree with or not, I'd rather see somebody stand for something, but they really, I mean, it's just go look at what the headlines were that day and then look at their Facebook page at 4:00.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And that's how I feel about a lot of people in media. It's just like everyone's kind of working to position themselves for like the job with whoever will hire them. Yeah. It's just like all of these, like I was saying about the football guys, it's like they're all on this like, I don't think the football season should go forward. They write about football, and they don't want, it seems like they don't want the season to happen.
Well, didn't something happen with Drew Brees in that case? I mean, he had to walk back a whole bunch of shit, right?
Drew Brees got in trouble for saying that I feel he had a very nuanced perspective on the flag. He said that flag represents all of us. His problem was he started off with saying, I would never disrespect the flag, which isn't the proper way to start off that nuanced perspective, because then everyone gets triggered. And I even have a really good friend who was like, man, like, he was just like, I really used to, I used to fuck with Drew Brees. Now I feel like I can't. But he didn't even hear the whole thing because he got caught up in it too. And it's a smart dude. Love the guy. But he got caught up in that too, where it was just like, and then you hear the end of it, and he's like, and Drew Brees is like, I feel like that flag represents all of us. It represents my grandfathers who fought in World War II. It represents the civil rights leaders who brought us to where we are today. And I think that it represents everything that made us who we are and who we are today. And that's kind of inherently my issue with the Kaepernick thing, is that the flag does represent all of us, and it does represent all of the way that we're striving to move forward as a nation. And while I did hear him, after the Nate Boyer thing, he was like, I don't want to distract from my cause by upsetting people. But then he just kind of, as people didn't like that, he kept going with it. And the reality is that like a lot of the civil rights movements of our time have been about living up to our ideals. the civics class that you talk about is that if you understand the civics of this country and you really like love and cherish the idea that of what we're supposed to be at our highest self as a country, because we have, as a founding document, like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that was a crazy idea. And that's a crazy, it's a super liberal position. It's a crazy liberal position at a time when people thought kings ruled over people. And it made the country now where we're allowed to argue over, you know, the wide variety of civil rights issues that we're allowed to move forward because of speech, because of the same free speech that a lot of people who claim to be of a, you know, a liberal mindset don't want to allow to happen. The exchange of ideas. I mean, the fact that they come after Joe Rogan, I mean, it tells you a lot. It's like they come after Jordan Peterson. They come after like guys that I've listened to many hours of, and I'm like, that's a good man who's made me a better man, you know?
Yeah, I'm so thankful, man. I had a lot of really good social study teachers, and I don't know if
Yeah.
it's because I enjoyed those topics, so maybe I had a positive experience with people. But I think the general consensus is there was a couple of people. Shout out to Mr. Stillman. Like the dude was awesome. He was a Civil War buff. I actually should reach out to him and have him on the podcast because
Do it.
he's a genius when it comes to the Civil War and Gettysburg especially.
Yeah.
But
being a Pennsylvania guy, I'm sure that was important to him, right?
yeah, and he was always you know, I think he was a pretty progressive guy. He was kind of like a kind of the hippie dude, but he was always somebody who made us think, and he would not just teach the curriculum, but he would get into real world scenarios, and he would put up like the song of the day. So you'd come into class and he'd have a song up, and then he'd talk about when that song was written, and he'd get into what was happening politically at that time. And it made you understand the nuance in life. We get back to the nuance, you know what I mean? It's like he made you understand that, yeah, this is the topic, but this is what was happening, and this was what occurred at Kent State, and this is why it's important. It wasn't just that there was a shooting and these guys were bad and these guys were good. It was like, hey, there was also something here, and that's what it scares me.
CCR, right? That was CCR song, right? What song is that?
Shit. Fuck.
We both know it. We both know the song. Yeah, I'll text it to you later.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, what I remember.
Like, but those things are how I understood about the things that were tainted or stained in our culture around civil rights, because we were allowed to have that dialogue in class. And I don't know, maybe I'm just been too far removed, and maybe you can't have those types of conversations with today's youth. I don't know. Maybe it's not possible, but I know firsthand that I benefited, and at least the views that I have around equality and just the freedom to think and the ability to achieve, those came from people like Mr. Stillman, who allowed us to exercise our brains in that 45 minutes that we had with him.
Yeah. And they approach things from a different angle, and they just like, you know, I mean, talking about something you're passionate about, like music and like a song and like the civil rights movement and like, you know, I've been listening to a lot of classic rock lately because it says something. It's music that says something. And, you know, the realization that, you know, you've got to listen to music that has a positive message, or like, you know, I'm trying to do that more because we're programming ourselves with the things that we take in. And like a lot of that classic rock stuff was, you know, stuff that really makes you think.
Yeah. Well, but you know, it's even worse, man. I'm sitting here, not to get off of that, because I'm obviously a big rock fan.
You play guitar?
I do. Yeah.
I feel like I saw a picture of you playing guitar.
Yeah, I play a little bit. Definitely. I'm not as good as they look, but
you're humble.
I can play a little bit.
Good.
I'll put you onto some good music. A buddy of mine, he was in a band that broke up, and now they just relaunched a new band that's I think you would probably dig, called The Violent. But where I was going with that is, so like, I look at a guy like Mr. Stillman. I'm sure there's teachers that are making impacts today, right? But I would almost have to say there's a big void of people like that in education at the public school level because of how teachers are treated, the salaries, all of what goes into being an educator. And it's the same mentality that unfortunately I think we're going to see with police force when you hear the message of defunding the police. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to get by reducing the budget? You're going to get less trained, less
Yeah,
qualified idiots who would rather do that than cut grass at this point,
100%.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's both with education and with the police, right? Is that um, if you increase the salary, you're going to demand a better quality person. I
Mhm.
mean, if you tell me that I can teach something in high school and I can make $75,000 a year, I might make different decisions when I'm growing up.
Yeah.
But if the narrative is that if I want to teach in a good school district where like people don't want to like be in bad school districts, like teachers don't, there's a lot of Teach Across America stuff and like all
Yeah.
that, but like you want to live with, like I had a really good baseball coach, Mr. Hunt, Mickey Hunt, and we actually just had a retirement party in December for him, and just seeing him reminded me of a lot of stuff, and it maybe touched off a few things in my mind, which is just like he was a really good teacher who wanted to live within the district he lived within, and he was able to. Like the place I grew up in, right outside New York, like is a nice area. It's a bit expensive, but him and his wife figured out how to make it work, and he coached teams, and he was a standard bearer of his community, and they figured out a way to make it work. And you kind of recognize with with the life he lived, like the simplicity of it is the beauty of it, where it's just like every spring he's coaching baseball, every winter he's coaching basketball. He coached all three of his kids in high school. All three of them played baseball in college. Like, it's a beautiful life, and it's a great way to make a living. But to get the kind of quality people, to get the Mr. Hunts of the world, we got to keep, we got to have a higher standard of what we're paying the individuals.
Well, and you don't get a Mr. Hunt or a Mr. Stillman or a fill in the blank Mrs. Whoever if you
Yeah,
don't also recognize when you have somebody like that and allow them to be themselves. Because if you just put them into a
yeah,
cookie cutter mold, it doesn't
100%.
matter anyways, right? They've got to have the
Yeah.
freedom to be able to have their students come in and see that written on the board or to have those conversations.
Mr. Hunt did it. He would tell stories. He was a big storyteller. He'd start off every school year. I had him 2 years in a row. He told the same story, but I was psyched to hear it again. And it was like the story of why he became a teacher. And he had this guy he called Charlie, and he would always tell stories about Charlie. And it's just like he was unequivocally himself. And same with Mr. Stillman. You're
Yeah.
saying is that he played the music that got him talking about life
And
to
you bought
you.
into it. You bought in. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? And that's, I don't think people, those are the things, right? It's the little things. You could have the best teacher, he could have the greatest degree, understand math. But if when the kids come in and sit down, they don't want to listen to him, it doesn't matter what he says. It has
yeah,
zero importance. And you
100%.
could do that across anything in life, even jujitsu, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm sure it's the same. I mean, you guys, I just saw the exciting news, some new instructors, some new head
yeah, yeah,
instructors.
yeah.
And I mean, how are you got to have that relationship. You have to have trust in somebody if you're going to listen to them, buy into their message. And how do you do that if you take away individuality
Yeah.
from people?
Well, that's exactly, like, it brings it back to my situation, is that I realize, like, I'm not trying to be in that cookie cutter mold. I'm not going to everyone's not going to be a fan of me. Okay, that's all right. But like, I'm going to be as respectful as I can. I'm going to be myself. I'm the person that I know I am. I'm going to try and make that shine through. And the reality is that if you're true to that, you'll find the people that want to listen to your message. You'll find the people that want to read a book about football strategy, and then maybe read a book about like the world today. And I'm trying to write about like these, the kinds of things that we become obsessed about. I became obsessed about figuring out how an NFL organization is run, and now I'm kind of obsessed about figuring out what the hell's going on in the world. So where's my angle to figure that out, right? And it's and that's what I realize is true to myself, and what's true to any educator, any writer, any coach, because each of these coaches we have, has their own style. Like the coach that left, Curtis Hembroff, he's up in Alaska now, right? And I got to spend a lot of time with him, and he's Eddie, one of Eddie's right hand men, and he taught me so much about leadership. And He's unequivocally himself. He's not afraid to hurt your feelings a little bit if it's the necessary, he's very direct. And it taught me a lot about leadership within, here's the way it has to be. And I understand your perspective, but if you're trying to go where we're trying to go as an organization, here's the way it is. And it's not mean. It's not, it's just, you got to be confident enough in yourself as a leader to be direct. You have to be confident in yourself enough as an educator to let people in to, this is why I'm passionate about history, right? Yeah. I'm passionate about classic rock, like Mr. Stillman, right? Like this is his way of telling you, like, hey, like, history is not boring. History is cool. And, one of the things that feels restrictive about the media climate is that it's telling you, no, it's not okay to be yourself. You need to be like all of us, or else you're going to go over here. And we don't like the people that are over here. We're going to put you in this little box with all the other people that don't, all the other broken toys, and we're going to call you names.
Well, in a world of I guess I'm at a loss for words. In a world of artificialness.
Yeah. You got to be authentic.
That's the one thing we have.
Yeah.
And yet it's the one thing that the artificial world is telling us to not be. So why, and you have to ask yourself, why is that?
Yeah.
Why is the world of artificial intelligence, reality, artificial lives on social media,
100%,
this fake reality that we all live in is telling us to not embrace the one thing that's truly you.
Right. 100%. I mean, like, what was interesting about my issue with Triumph was that we started to go through their writer, like their editors, their past writers, things they've said. One editor was saying that people expect writers sports writers to stick to sports, but the very thing that they write about is also, is impacted by everything else outside of sports, all their life experience. So here they were saying, one of their editors is there sitting there saying, hey, like, being a sports writer isn't just about being a sports writer, but when it came time for someone to, I'm a data guy. So when I'm looking at all this COVID stuff and I'm looking at all the stuff you and I talked about and all the impact of it long term and what kind of impact that can have, here I am sitting there like, hey, look at all this data. And they hired me to write a book about data, and they didn't want to hear me talk about data.
Yeah.
So, they didn't want to hear me talk about, hey, I approve of the cause and I believe that, everyone's donating to this cause for good reason, but here's this thing, this isn't what it looks like. And then here we are 2 months later and, riots are still going on in Portland. So it's like, I kind of been proven right in some ways,
Yeah. This would be my take from that. And I'll leave you with this. I see that. And if anybody's listening to this, think what you want, but that to me screams opportunity.
Oh, yep. That's exactly what I saw.
Because when you see a world where the news isn't worried about placating to public demand, you're living in a world where the public doesn't have a voice or the ability to do anything. So I see that. I see people, criticizing your publisher, going after you because, to your point, you're realistic. You understand it. There's people who pay their salaries that matter more to them than them publishing your book. They're afraid. But what that says is that there's opportunity for you to go direct with this book, or for me with this podcast, or for whoever. And 20, 30 years ago, when there wasn't all of that competition, nobody gave a fuck what you said because they weren't afraid of you. They weren't afraid of you either beating them or sinking their ship.
Well, there are other people out there. There's guys like Clay Travis. There's the guy from Barstool Sports, El Prez. There's Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, I mean, is a really shining example for all of us of like, you don't have to play the game. And like, if you don't play the game and if you're authentic, people are going to come. Obviously, Joe's a special case, but he still serves as a guiding light of like, hey, who are you listening to? Why are you listening to them? And what I realize is my heroes are the people they're trying to cancel. So if they're trying to cancel me, okay, I'm over here with all the other people that I look up to. And honestly, there's not that many people no disrespect, there's not that many people in football media who I'm like, oh, I want to be like him when I grow up. And what you said is true, is that there's a major opportunity. So if you're worried about being authentic, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping that my story now gives me, it gave me the experience of like, I was talking about it theoretically prior of like, and now I've actually been canceled.
Yeah.
So now I'm speaking from experience where it's like, it's not, I'm on the other side of it. Not that scary. It's not scary at all, because the reality is
Empowering.
it's empowering, because it's like, I know exactly where I'm going now. I'm not going with all that, because like I said, the people, when you stand up for the right thing, in the Revolutionary War, it had major consequences. For me, the consequences, I'm going to go continue doing what I was doing. I'm just not tied to any corporation that can tell me what to do, which then inherently provides me an opportunity to not follow the rest of what everyone else is doing.
And what are the benefits to that? Marketing? I mean, is it
Who
some
knows?
distribution? Is it like, I would imagine maybe like the electronic distribution, and I mean, I don't know a damn thing about publishing, but I would have to imagine you can do a lot of this legwork on your own. It may be a little more work,
Yeah.
but I'm sure
Bro,
a
I got
hell
a
of a lot
mouth.
more satisfying.
Yeah, I got a mouth on me, dude. I've got a mouth. They gave me a story. They gave me a purpose. They gave me something to fight for. Because I really feel strongly about the idea that we're watching it play out on our streets right now. What a generation of kids that only heard one side of an argument and thought that the rest of the other side of the argument was just like this hurt. Like we spent, like you said about your brother, your 23-year-old brother, right? He got a whole different learning experience than you did, right? And we're seeing it play out in the streets. We're seeing the anger, and we're seeing that our society's failed us in some ways. And sports is a unifying thing. I played football in college. I'm from a wealthier area. I played football with kids that were not from wealthy areas, that were from difficult circumstances in Philadelphia, in DC, in New York, and some of those people that I met became my brothers. And same thing at the gym with Jiu Jitsu, right? So it's like my life experience has been becoming family and relying on and spending more time with individuals that have a way different background than me. Than I spend more time over the last 10, 15 years with like people from my teams than I did with my own family. So it's like, the reality is that sports is unifying. So to see sports being now utilized for political purposes, when the only political purpose that it should serve is that, hey, we're all coming together. We all believe in this thing we're doing together as a country. We appreciate the freedoms granted to us by this country. We know we're not doing it right. Essentially what Drew Brees said, we know we're not doing it right, all the way right, but we're working on it. And, we're trying to be better. And, and that got Drew Brees in trouble. So, if it gets me in trouble, fuck it. I don't have anyone to answer to, dog.
You're always welcome back on here. So,
Bro, hey, when you come to Austin, come through, and we'll do a you come on 10 PATX radio, I'll come on here.
I love it.
We'll chop it up again. When you come down here with team take action, right?
Yeah. So we're relaunching action later, hopefully in the next week. So just final touches. We're waiting for a couple of things to get finalized, but we just announced the Rumble Johnson partnership that we have. And
he's getting back in the cage, right?
Sounds like it, man. I don't know. I did a podcast with him. You'll have to check out. He talks.
I'm going to. Yeah.
He was pretty open about kind of what was going on, but I'm excited if he does decide to get back in there. I'm really excited. I know he's putting in a lot of work right now. So
he's looking beefy too, bro.
Yeah,
he got big. He's ready for heavyweight, right? He's not even playing around with no weight cuts anymore.
I just saw he posted a video on his. He made a post where he was talking about his workouts during COVID, and when he started this quote unquote comeback, I think he said he was like 265, and he's down to like 230, which is lower than he was ever when he was fighting at 205. So
nice.
Yeah, so it'll be exciting.
Nice. This is I'm excited about that right hand he's got.
Scariest, one of the scariest dudes ever.
Him and Ngannou. That's what I want.
I know, man.
Give me that UFC.
I don't know if he would fight. I wonder if he would fight heavyweight right now. I really do. Because I was surprised at how much weight he lost, quite honestly.
So he started running. It seems he just like whatever. Every dude, a lot of people took. I mean, I heard about baseball players who lost 15 pounds once this thing started. Everyone was just like, all right, what can I do? I can do body weight stuff and I can run.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I'm gonna run. Like I'm gonna run for the first time. I'm gonna be the guy out there running, and a lot of people got their cardio up, and
It
I
was all
mean,
this. It was all this action coffee that he's drinking.
yeah, that's the key, bro. That's the key. The product placement right there.
Yeah.
Bam.
I'll actually I need to get I'll make one trip. I'll either have somebody from our distribution center in Austin bring it, or I'll
Okay.
send out a box to either you or her, but I'll send over some goodies for you guys to share with the 10th Planet team.
Hell yeah, we'll post it all over.
Good stuff,
Yeah,
man.
you're come down, come meet the 10th Planet family, and you're always welcome. I appreciate you having me on. This is a great conversation, man. I was super happy to talk about football, talk about things outside of football, because it's just there's so much to talk about, and hopefully share a perspective that hopefully we both shared a perspective that people wanted to hear, and makes them feel a little bit better, makes them feel a little bit like less alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think a lot of people share a lot of what
yeah.
we talked about. So their ability to listen, hey, gotta give it to them, whether they like it or not. So
Yeah. Well,
where
thank you,
can
brother.
yeah, definitely. Social media is I know you're at
Zack
Zack
Moore
Moore
NFL.
NFL.
Yeah. On Instagram, Twitter, at Zack Moore NFL. And then also you can buy my first book, Caponomics: Building Super Bowl Champions, is available on Amazon. That's the first edition of Caponomics. And then the second edition will be out somewhere this fall. I am still talking to some publishers, but I'm leaning towards self-publishing. I mean, what better story than I got out of a publishing deal. They still had to pay me, and then I got to own the book and got most of the royalties, right? I mean, I couldn't ask for more. So, I might go that route, but yeah, I'm proud of the first book, but I'm even prouder of the second book. So, we'll get together again, and, we'll chop it up, and hopefully we'll have this second book out then.
Exciting, man. Definitely. I'm going to go back and I want to read Caponomics. I didn't get a chance to read it before we did this, but after talking with you, I'm even more intrigued. So
Thank you.
For sure, dude.
I appreciate you being a supporter.
Without a doubt. Keep being you.